This week on Countdown to Green, presented by Traction, we recap all the action from the 2023 season IMSA President John Doonan stops by the show, and we welcome Rexy to the IMSA Esports Global Championship. All that and more coming up on Countdown to Green.
Hello and welcome to the first ever Traction Countdown to Green. This is the opening round of the IMSA Esports Global Championship. My name is John Monroe, and alongside me today is esports extraordinaire, commentator, encyclopedia, Lewis McLean. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I mean, I'm happy to be back for another season. The last couple of years have been absolutely incredible. For the IMSA Esports Global Championship, it's always been exciting, and I can't wait to get another season underway.
So this is basically just a quick preview show, so we're going to talk about last season's happenings in the championship. We're also going to give you a quick explanation of what the series is all about. We're going to look forward to the season ahead, the opening round today at Road Atlanta, and we're also going to hear from IMSA CEO John Doonan, so plenty to get excited about. And I think the best place to start, Lewis, is from the very beginning. Some people may be watching this and have never seen esports before, have never seen the championship before, so why don't you explain a little bit about what it's about?
Yeah, so obviously let's roll things back, simplify it. Obviously they're all racing on the iRacing platform, which is a simulator that they've all got access to, and they're all basically racing from home. It's the highest level of sim racing, some real top quality drives, some of them even racing real world. It's an incredible grid of drivers and teams across the board, and we're effectively almost like imitating the IMSA Championship in real life, going to some of the circuits that you'll be well aware of. We've watched IMSA before, of course, starting the season at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, so kind of a reverse of what it is in real life, where the season ends. We'll be ending our season at Daytona, where the real life season starts, and between that we're going to Indianapolis, and then of course to Sebring. We're racing in two categories, the GTP and the GTD category, and all the races the same length. They're all 2 hours and 40 minutes on the dot.
48 cars on the grid as well, so a massive field, 32 in GTD and 16 in GTP. There was also pre-qualifying as well, so drivers had to earn their spot, or teams I should say had to earn their spot on the field unless they won some of the IMSA special events last season and also were reigning champions of this series. So it's not easy to get onto the grid, it's very, very competitive, and also prize money is up for grabs, quite a lot of it as well, $25,000 spread across the two classes, so $12,500 for each class, and then that goes to the top 10 in the championship for each, so there's a lot at stake here. So obviously, Lewis, you were one of the commentators last season, and that must have been a lot of fun, because from the brief glimpses that I caught, the racing was frenetic.
Yeah, I mean, I've commentated on a lot of sim racing, and the IMSA Esports Global Championship last year was absolutely incredible from start to finish. I mean, it's such an awkward season to go racing when your race distances are 2 hours and 40 minutes, and that's kind of so awkward on strategy. And we saw that so many times throughout the season, because normally a 2 hour race, you split in half and just go at it. 2 hours and 40 minutes, it doesn't quite fit so nicely, and you saw a few teams trying to think outside the box, going long. I mean, VRS Commander in the first round with Charlie Collins went a little bit longer on the opening stint to try and open things up, and the race ended up getting a podium at the end of that one. There was a battle in the GTD category towards the end of that race with the Apex Racing team and Team Redline, a little bit of contact between the pair of them, and a bit of drama between the pair of them to start the season, which kind of continued on through. The GTD category was fantastic in this battle between Apex and Redline. It came down to the wire at Daytona, and unfortunately there was an issue for Apex Racing team. Team Redline were dominating that race anyway and ended up winning. And then the GTPs, I mean, how cool is it seeing these monsters of motorsport racing at the top end, being driven by these the sim racers? Absolutely incredible. All the races were absolutely thrilling, and it kind of ended with that Daytona race where Exet won, of course, driven by Owen Carroll and Casey Kerwin, which is a great combo. They're back together again this season, but I mean, it's so exciting to see them kind of battle up to that victory, which had eluded them quite a lot throughout the season.
So many different names on the podium as well. Yeah. For me, it was the strength and depth that just was incredible. All the top teams, but obviously it was Coanda that ended up taking the title in their Porsche and GTP, and it was Redline in the Ferrari that took the title in GTD. Now, earlier on, we caught up with IMSA CEO John Doonan to talk a little bit about the series, and here's what he had to say.
Right, so I'm joined by John Doonan, of course, who is the president of the International Motorsports Association. Obviously, to start out this brand new season, John, I mean, what an incredible journey it's been so far over the last couple of years. I mean, talk to us about that journey and kind of how we've got to this point.
Well, who would have thought that this would be our third annual esports championship already? When I joined IMSA, I felt like, this is a space where we could really capitalize on opportunities to attract the next generation fan, the next generation participant. Long comes the pandemic, and this became our form of racing. But now, to be in the third year of the IMSA Esports Global Championship in partnership with iRacing and in partnership with VCO, we're thrilled where we are today. Clearly, the opportunities in terms of vehicles has expanded so much, and I think that's an exciting element for those who are on the pro side of esports, and also the exciting part of this year is those who may not be on the pro side but do want to try to qualify.
And so, obviously, IMSA is very keen in the world of sim racing, and one of the probably more keen than most other series. Why is that the case? Why is IMSA so keen in the world of sim racing?
Well, who would have thought that we're 3 years on in the IMSA Esports Global Championship, huge partnership with iRacing and with VCO to make all this happen. Obviously, this year we bring in Thrustmaster, well known in the sim world for accessories and the support that they provide the sim racers. So we're thrilled to have them on board. But you rewind the clock, 4.5 years, 5 years. And I came to IMSA and I thought, wow, this is a space that we can really maximize our participation and grow participation from the next generation fan or the next generation racer. And lo and behold, just like 30 days later, 45 days later, the pandemic arrives, and this became our form of racing. It was our form of entertainment to continue to deliver value to partners. And now, 3 years on, we're in a fantastic championship with pro racers, now adding the opportunity for folks that don't do it full time to join on the best racing circuits in our championship, Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, of course, Indianapolis and Daytona, and all the places that mean so much to us throughout the year. It's Sebring as well. So we're really thrilled to provide this, giving folks who don't do it professionally an opportunity this year. And then it's really down to the cars to have I guess 4 of our 5 regular GTP manufacturers running and 8 of 10 GT cars to be able to put the product in the hands of our sim racers worldwide. It's really special for us, and we're thrilled to provide the opportunity.
Like you say there, obviously third year of it. 2022 was a fantastic season. 2023 built on that. 2024 is looking to build on that even more. What do you make of this series so far that seems to be going from strength to strength?
Well, for me, it starts with the product. IMSA has an incredible portfolio of manufacturers, now 19 as we added Cupra to the mix in TCR back at Motul Petit Le Mans. So it starts with the manufacturers. To have the platforms, 4 of our 5 regular competitors in GTP competing in the championship with the actual road, the car that runs on the road racing circuits of IMSA, and then I think 8 of our GT manufacturers, 8 of 10 with the platform to compete. That's really incredible. So it starts with that. Then it's the man or the woman in the seat of the sim rig, and so those folks then get to experience exactly what our drivers and teams do in the WeatherTech Championship. I think also the level of competition in this space mirrors the level of competition we've seen in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. I mean, when you have championships coming down to the final laps of the final race of the championship, it's pretty incredible. And so I think what we've seen in the last couple of years for sure is the level of championship talent here in the esports program has reached an all-time high as well. Now I just love also, and it's really in the spirit of why IMSA was established in the first place. You've got the pro level teams running in the esports championship. Now we give the opportunities to folks that may not be doing it professionally. And that's what IMSA stood for in its very, very grassroots beginning in 1969, giving people the opportunity to go racing at whatever level they wanted. So now you bring in some of the folks that do it as a hobby with those who are doing it professionally, and it's the best of both worlds.
And finally, obviously, focusing on real-world IMSA, or the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. I mean, obviously, you got a new year coming up fairly soon. It's been quite busy behind the scenes, a lot of chops, a lot of changes, and building on so much over the last couple of years. I mean, what are your hopes for the year ahead? Because it looks like it's going to be a fantastic one.
Well, every day when my IMSA teammates and I walk in the lobby of the office, there's a countdown clock, and I think today it says 64 days until the Rolex 24. So we're really, really excited. Our sport is at an absolutely tremendous moment, and I somewhat sound like a broken record, but it's the facts. 19 manufacturers, stability with our partners, WeatherTech, Michelin, VP Racing Fuels, stability with NBC and our partnership with them on the NBC Sports, the USA, the Peacock side. Really, really stable there. YouTube has become a tremendous distribution channel for us on a global basis. So many folks who will be watching the Esports Championship opener from Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta on Sunday will certainly be able to see our races throughout the season on YouTube when they're outside the U.S. And then, you cap it off with fan attendance that in 2024 was nearly every single event was an all-time record of people joining us on site. So you got stability, you got very energetic and enthusiastic fans. And the final piece, of course, is the competition. And as I said earlier, when you have championships coming down to the final stint, the final lap, the final corner of a championship that's had 54 hours of racing, it's pretty incredible in terms of a show for our audience. And with 19 manufacturers doing battle, it really is a really special place. So full grids in 2025 again, very exciting for those who are tuning in or attending at the racetrack. And we're just so grateful for all of our fans that continue to come out and be part of and engage with IMSA.
John, thank you for your time. Thank you for everything you're doing in the motorsport world. And good luck. Hope you enjoy.
Thank you, Lewis.
So great to hear from John there, and one thing that I know he's going to be very excited about this season specifically is the introduction of a new team. AO Racing, who are the real-life GTD champions from last year, are also going to be taking part in the Esports series.
I mean, look, it's a fan favourite paint scheme, isn't it? I mean, we love seeing this car out on circuit. Obviously, we do have to thank a little bit Drew Adamson, of course, as a senior broadcast producer / director here, and I was kind of behind the scene for the broadcast to bring it to where we're at. And he badgered him a little bit on social media to bring this paint scheme in. And to be fair, with it being such an iconic paint scheme in motorsport, I'm all for it.
Everyone loves Rexy, I think that's going to translate as well over to the sim. Obviously, Lauren Heinrich as well drove in the real car last year where they won the championship, but he also competed in the Esports series, another fan favourite of course, and did pretty well in the opening round, so there's a lovely bit of crossover there. Yeah, he had a podium in the first round alongside in the car with Charlie Collins. Of course, that was the car that ended up going on to win the championship in the GTP category. Lauren Heinrich's been well into sim racing for a long time, so it's always great to see him behind the wheel, and great to see him doing well in the championship as well. Let's talk about today's race, Road Atlanta. It's a circuit that I love personally. I think it's great to drive. I know that you're a big fan of it too, but why is that? I mean, it's one of my top 5 circuits in the world. It's just an absolute rollercoaster, crazy track, an absolute thrill ride all the way around. And it's a proper driver's track as well. I mean, to have it host the opening race of the season, of course, the AMD 240 race here at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. It's such a difficult track to kind of navigate. Always has a bit of drama. Had drama last year, and for the previous 2 years we've had it, and always has drama when we do Petit Le Mans on iRacing, obviously in real life as well. And that's obviously just it. And it kind of makes sense that this is the first round for the championship, and so it's always exciting. It's just fun to drive. I mean, in last season's opener there was a crash before even the start line. There was cars in the wall with damage, so that's going to be something to keep an eye on. We actually have a hot lap that we're going to show you now from a GTD car going around Road Atlanta, so check it out. So, Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, home of Petit Le Mans and a roller coaster of a racetrack. Turn 1 is very, very quick indeed. Brake late, carry as much speed and momentum as possible, and run all the way out to the exit curb as you prepare for turn 2. You want to get all the way over to the left, down to third gear, over the curb on the right, and now you head down towards the S's, an incredibly famous and exciting piece of racetrack. So much fun to drive, very, very difficult in traffic. Then you want to watch out for this approach to turn 5, use as much curb as possible, but it's very, very easy here on the exit to lose the back end or also run wide and give yourself a track limits warning. So that is going to be a key point to look out for in the race. Not got much time to breathe now as you head towards turn 6, which is a banked right-hander, fairly high speed. Use the banking to your advantage, get back on the power early, but on the brakes as soon as you can, and then head through turn 7. This is going to be a place to watch for incidents during the race too. We saw a few last season, and I definitely would expect to see more this time around. But finally now, on the back straight, you have your first moment to breathe. This track is relentless, even the pit straight is incredibly short. This is the only moment you're going to have to catch your breath and prepare for the end of the lap, heading now down towards the chicane at turn 10. Get your braking point right, watch out for lockups, there's going to be incidents down here as well for sure. Head over the curb on the left, make sure you hit that apex on the right, and then use all of the road once again, using the exit curb as you run over the top. Turn 11, there's an 80-foot drop now to turn 12, hard on the power, absolutely pinned through the final corner, and that's going to be your lap of Michelin Road Atlanta. And now you know why so many drivers love Road Atlanta. It's such an exciting circuit, and I cannot wait for this race to get underway. A couple more bits of information we should probably touch on as well. This is of course a team-based series, so there will be multiple drivers per car and minimum stint lengths, and by the way, you can find out everyone who's entered via the Traction.gg website. We have the full entry list for the season. You can also head over to the iRacing website to see a full season preview. Who are the ones that you're going to be keeping an eye on in this race, Lewis? Because there's lots of top teams out there, but only one of them can ultimately win each class championship. Who are the favourites?
I mean, it's a tricky one. Everyone's kind of leaning towards Redline because they are the dominant force in sim racing at the moment. But realistically, I can't take my eye off of Williams. And I'm listening to the GTP category right now because when it comes to the VCO Grand Slams, which is kind of, it's actually been a pathway into this. If you win the VCO Grand Slams, you actually get an entry into the IMSA Esports Global Championship. Williams Esports have won 3 of the 4 of them. The only one they didn't win was Watkins Glen, which was a double class domination from Team Redline. And then in GTD, I'm kind of leaning towards maybe even some of the Mustang cars at Sontec. They were pretty good in the Fuji race last year, in like one of them iRacing special events, but for Apex Redline, that's kind of where I'm looking at.
I think for me, Apex obviously won the championship in 2022 in GTD, which was the top class at the time. I think they did really well last season, but they got a bit unlucky to fail to finish one of the races. So I think they're going to be right up there again in that championship. Obviously, you're always looking out for the likes of Kwan Batu. And there's also a guest entry in each round as well. So we're going to have a Michelin car out there for the first round. I don't know the drivers yet, but that's obviously going to be one to keep an eye on, an exciting paint scheme to follow. So yeah, plenty of different options out there, plenty of different teams that can win the races.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, obviously, I'm going to lean a little bit also towards Channel 199. Love seeing that victory at the end of the season for the XSEC car, which was Owen Carroll, Casey Kerwin. Yeah, no, they might go strong this year.
Yeah, so many different winners throughout the season, and hopefully we'll see more of the same this time around. But that is going to be it for the first ever Traction Countdown to Green. We hope you've enjoyed this show, but more importantly, we hope you enjoy the show to come. It's going to be incredibly exciting, and we can't wait to see it.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head to head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Trumpets blowing in the distance. Been broken, couldn't keep me down. I'm back better than ever now.
It's been another great year of IMSA full medal action, but it's time to turn back to the virtual world and where things kick off for the IMSA Esports Global Championship. Welcome to the AMD 240 live from the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, the first round of an action-packed championship ahead of us. Well, welcome to the IMSA TV and iRacing Esports Network platforms. So glad you joined us. It's been a long year since we closed out the championship at Daytona, but we've got 49 of the world's best sim racing teams and a championship now open to all. Arjuna Kankipati alongside of Peter Mackay and Joey Atterbury. And Peter, I'm excited to get underway.
As am I. We had, as you said, a fantastic outdoor season in the IMSA world, but what a great off-season activity this is to bring the counterparts in the virtual world. We see the best sports car racers in the world competing in IMSA in the outdoor world. Well, we're going to do exactly the same here in the virtual world on the iRacing platform with a whole range of cars, GTP and GTD, and we've picked a pretty good circuit to start off with.
Best road course in America, not just our opinion. Take it from Dorian Pan as well. Joey, great to have you join the broadcast team for the very first time. You've got plenty of experience around the IMSA paddock. Much like what Peter just said, it's got a real taste, though, of blending the virtual and real. And I think this year as well, some of the cars we've got on display, that gets even more true.
We always talk about that sim to reality bridge and that gap. Well, we're going the other way. We watched the real world IMSA season, and now it's time to celebrate that virtual season. And speaking of the schedule, that first round race number 1 today, right here at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. And then we're going to go a little bit north up to Indianapolis here in a couple weeks. And after that, we've got a little bit of a break. Head on down to Florida for some nice weather at Sebring International Raceway for race number 3. And then, of course, we'll close it out in January at Daytona International Speedway for race 4.
Only one change from last year. We swapped Watkins Glen for Indy, but of course, one thing that remains is our BOP provided by the team at TFR Lab. Now, iRacing's BOP, for the most part, provides equal playing field for the average sim racer, but when you get to this level of competition where every driver and team is extracting every inch of performance that they can from the track and the cars, some slight adjustments. Only one car hit with a power adjustment. That's the Mercedes AMG and GT3. Lots of weight penalties and then a little bit of fuel balancing as well, all in search, Peter, of trying to give us the most interesting race around, like what we've said, is one of the best tracks in the world.
It is one of the finest tracks you'll ever go to, and hopefully we'll see a lot of those different manufacturers racing very, very close. They've been racing here since 1970, cut into the red Georgia clay. This track, for many, is one of the best, not just in North America, but in the entire world. And it's a circuit that's very difficult to set the car up. The twistier section, pretty much the first half of the lap, you need as much downforce as you possibly can get, and then the second part of the lap, the big long back straightaway, that's where you want as little downforce as possible. So getting that fine balance on the setup is really, really difficult here at Road Atlanta. And really, this track has so much heritage as well. 1997, when Don Paynos bought the track, we had Petit Le Mans for the first time the year later, and then the American Le Mans Series, which of course is part of the modern day IMSA. So this is steeped in sports car racing folklore, this place.
And well, we've already had qualifying done and dusted around what is a fantastic track. Here's a look at the AMD Pole Award, and well, for Team Redline, double delight, they will lead us to the green in Joey, both of our GTP and GTD classes.
Yeah, the number 20 is on pole, that AMD pole award for BMW M Team Redline. Chris Lullum is in the car right now in that warm-up phase. And then also in the GTD class, the number 170 from Team Redline. Gianno Vecchio is currently driving that car in warm-up. So both of those pole positions, Team Redline right there, and then Team Redline 20 up top in GTP.
Let's take a look at what is going to be a story across of the entire season. Each race, a Michelin wild card entry. And for this race, Scherer Esport, a team competing out in Germany in real-world competition, but in the virtual world, going from strength to strength. Won the Digital Nürburgring Endurance Series Porsche Cup class last winter, won the 24 Hours of the Nürburgring on iRacing this year, and now Raphael Renhofer and Julian Reimer fly the flag for the blue, white, and yellow highlighted 116 McLaren 720S. The team is given a free choice of car. They chose this machine that will try and power them to a pretty decent result here today. But we've already mentioned qualifying is done and dusted. And this means now we're getting ready to go racing. The tension builds, the excitement in the air, and it's not a long season by any means as well. These first 2 hours and 40 minutes could really determine, is it a fight for a championship or a fight for obscurity? Let's head down trackside. We're ready to take a look at the grid. Joey, run us down through the GTPs.
Yeah, starting off with those prototypes, it is BMW M Team Redline, that number 20 on pole. Next to him is going to be Williams Esports Chill Blast in that number 5 starting in second. Coanda Esports here in third place with BMW M Team BS Competition driving that number 89 car. That's going to be starting in fourth place. In fifth place is the Solpec Precision Racing Team, that number 60 car. Next to him is going to be the number 8 of Coanda Esports. The Channel 199 Sim Racing Team will start on row number 4 in 7th place with Williams Esports Prodigy in 8th place. Race Clutch Black, the number 23 car, starting in 9th. GridandGo.com Esports IMSA GTP team rounding out the top 10. In 11th, we have Race Clutch Red in the number 15 car. CrowdStrike Racing in the number 3 will be starting in 12th. Apex Racing team in 13th. Fiercely Forward in the number 11 will be starting in 14th. CrowdStrike Racing in the number 4 will start in 15th place. And then the final of those GTP cars is going to be the Simify Esports number 14.
And it's a stacked field of GTP, but small in numbers compared to the GTDs. Redline lock out the front row as well. The 170 searching for a championship defense. They qualified second, finished second to open up last season's campaign. What could they do on that front row? GridandGo.com, though, are going to really try and push them from row number 2 alongside Drago Racing, who have chosen the Lamborghini for the season. The second of those Grid and Go yellow machines is alongside of the 56 Racing team. Great to see them. Guillaume Levette qualifying that car up in 6th position. We've got a stacked field of cars, and one thing we haven't mentioned, all the manufacturers represented in equal quantities. So AO Racing by Coanda, can't wait to see Rexy on the grid. So one of our first Porsches alongside the BMW for the Mahler Racing team, and then Johan Hart in that Mercedes AMG Team Apex Racing team. They know they're sometimes on the back foot in qualifying, edge of the top 10 for the 198 and the 199, but can our championship winners from 2022 fight their way back to the front? Vesta Sport alongside of BS Turner on the 6th row of the grid. What can that split livery Zebra do to try and gallop its way forward? And then the first of the World Sim Racing cars, the 132, lines up alongside Team PGZ. Can't wait to see what Pablo and his community can do for us here today. Alexei Nesov, Valkyrie competition inside of Sontec Racing Overpower with Mag Performance SRT, and then the Mercedes AMG Williams Esports, the only representative for Williams in the GTD class. Some work to do from 18th position. Sontec Racing, Scherer Esports, our Michelin wildcard, edge of the top 20, and then Drago Racing, Door Esports, Impulse Racing, the second of the Door Esports entry, rounding out our top 24 and bringing us towards the tail end of the starting grid. G2 Esports, who have a penalty to serve straight off the bat. Drive-through penalty will see them drop back through the running order. They're alongside the second of the PGZ cars, second of the Mag Performance cars, 27th for them, with a big green machine of Maniti Racing in the McLaren, 28th for them. Visceral Black in 29th alongside the Solpec Precision entry, one of our Porsches, and you can really see just how much the field is mixed up. Porsches at the front, Porsches at the back, with 07 Racing, Channel 199 Sim Racing, and WSR Esports through the 33 GTDs that will roll. That's a great sight. You've got the Michelin building off on the left where our virtual commentary booth is, and now the pace car ready to lead these drivers around for that one formation lap before we kick this race off. Peter, talk to us about our Michelin keys to the race.
Well, the first one, endurance, not a sprint, very, very important. This is a length of race which is very familiar to drivers in the real world IMSA Championship, 2 hours and 40 minutes. But in the world of iRacing, that is a little bit longer than what you would expect in regular race time. So you've got to be careful and you've got to be quite clever. Coming on to that, traffic management at this circuit above almost anywhere else in North America. Certainly for permanent racetracks, this is the most important for watching for your traffic management. As the iRacing pace cars coming down here through turn 3 and 4, this is where it gets really nasty, where the prototypes just want to get on with it, but you're going to have a sea of GT cars to get past, and we have a huge field of GT cars, so that's just going to be an endless conveyor belt of traffic for them. Expect to see some incidents in traffic, but you've got to keep yourself out of trouble. And as our third one is, make it to turn 2, very much applicable on that same point.
Let's not think about what happened last year on the run down to the start line, let alone up towards turn number 1. Plenty of chaos. As mentioned, couple of penalties. First, for what is car 17 in the sim. G2 Esports joining with a slightly incorrect number. That's like the wrong paperwork being submitted. Stop and hold penalty, so even more severe. And Joey, really not the way you want to kick your season off. Channel 199 in the GTD class have a very similar penalty as well. But it is a long race. 2 hours and 40 minutes doesn't sound like a lot, but we're going to pack a lot into it.
Yeah, it is that endurance format, and just like Peter said, it is a key to win here. You know, you have to make it through the entire race. Sure, you don't want to have to dig yourself out of a hole immediately, but it is what it is. The rules are there on paper, and you have to follow them just like everybody else. And if you don't, well, guess what? You're going to have to deal with that penalty, and you're going to have to climb out of that hole.
So a 10-second gap left between our two classes, and we'll get a split class start to kick this season off. Very quickly from each of you. Peter, you first. Prediction, who wins in GTP?
That's a very difficult one to say. Very, very difficult one to say. I think Redline are looking very, very strong. I know it's predictable to pick the pole sitter, but yeah, they're looking just on a groove right now.
And Joey, GTD?
I'm looking at that Drago Racing, that Lamborghini, the only Ferrari outside of the top 4.
Well, we're ready to go. Let's send the pace car off and away. 2 hours and 40 minutes to kick off another season of the IMSA Esports Global Championship. Live from the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. Field left in control of Silly Lully. What can Chris Lullum do in the BMW M-Team Redline car? We're green for the AMD 240, and a great launch from all 16 of our GTPs as they now climb up through turn number 1. Challenge from Kawanda in the 18 as Charlie Collins boxes out Daniel Lorenzo, but now through turn 3, they'll work their way down in towards the S's. A safe and tidy start replicated hopefully by the GTDs, led by 2 Redline cars, Johnny Vecchio, Enzo Benito, wheel to wheel. Green flag drops for them as well, single file instantly, and here comes Nicholas Rubelar in that Drago Racing Lamborghini, challenging his former teammate Sven Haase around the outside before finally conceding. 56 Racing of the Chevrolet going to try and work their way around the outside into turn number 3, and it causes chaos. Off the track they go, Peter.
That's it. What was one of our Michelin keys to the race, try and make it through turn 2. Well, they did. They got up to turn 3 just. So a problem there. But even without having the classes mixed together, it's so busy down there in that GTD pack. So when we get into it, when the prototypes start coming through, it is going to get really busy, rush hour traffic style.
Well, I've already seen through turn 5 a couple of cars wheel to wheel in this GTD class, but all of this, only one driver really losing a bunch of time through 3, one driver losing a bunch of time through turn number 5. And that was one thing that Peter was kind of mentioning. Large GTD pack, we might expect plenty of chaos. Already though, GTPs, Joey, have started their next lap. We're going to get into the thick of the traffic pretty quickly, right on board with Mitchell DeYoung.
Now let's see how he handles this turn number 5. You see all the prototypes using that entry curve and then the exit curves, kind of staying off of those apex curves. You don't want to upset the platform right in the middle of turn number 5 there and then come through turn 7. In my opinion, the most important turn on this entire place. You have to get the power down, traction coming off of that corner because it leads on to the longest straightaway here at Road Atlanta.
Not very straight, both left and right, but also up and down. It undulates, and it really is that one opportunity to breathe before you go again for the roller coaster of the lap. Heard a bit of fuel savings, so some of these drivers instantly, Peter, have recognized there's some strategy to play.
And this isn't an easy circuit to overtake on, so there is an opportunity to try and fuel save. The GTP cars, we'll see them pitting around the 50-minute mark, something like that, so they're going to have a couple of pit stops through this race. So if you can be a little bit more fuel efficient, it can make a big difference. So Mitchell DeYoung, who we ride with now in the Porsche 963, we wanted to try and use as little throttle as possible on that 4.6 litre V8, just blending out of the throttle. But you can only really do that for a couple of laps because we're going to hit the conveyor belt of GT cars. As whoa, De Jong goes a bit wide there coming out of turn 5, gets very bumpy over there, so you got to be careful. But yeah, you can do a little bit of fuel saving to start with, but to be honest, when you get to that sea of GTD cars, you're not going to have that luxury, so you've got to get it done now.
And we got a battle, a real fight for the GTDs because your race leader is breaking away. Sven Haase inserted himself to second. Enzo Benito swarmed. What's Nicholas Rubelar going to do? Because he's got to defend from Dino Lombardi as well. And this is where, Joey, having teammates is somewhat of a benefit, right? Because you can trust that they're going to do something that helps you a bit more, as opposed to someone who's going to throw a lunge up the inside, as I'm going to assume Sven Haase did to get up to second.
Yeah, it's kind of the unknown variable of not having your teammate around. Are they going to race me? Are they going to push the entry corners and whatnot? But if you have your teammates around, yeah, you usually are all on the same page. You all have agreed upon a strategy and say, hey, if you're out front, I'm going to go ahead and just slipstream and save fuel here behind. Or let's go ahead and try to bump draft. Let's go ahead and try to push ourselves forward. But either way, you're right. I think all the teammates are all on the same page and probably in communication as well.
This is one of those stories we touched on in our pre-show, presented by Traction, of course. The arrival of Rexy to the IMSA Esports Global Championship. Love seeing the engagement that AO Racing have had with this livery across the real-world competition. And now, partnered up with Coanda, they've got Tristan Iglesias, Michael Johnny representing them here today. The only thing that they don't have on the livery just yet, Peter, is a couple of gold teeth. They've got to win some races in this championship first.
They're searching for those gold teeth, aren't they? Yeah, AO Racing are one of the kind of factory-blessed teams in IMSA. Of course, won the GTD Pro Championship, but drama here in the GTPs from another Porsche-blessed team, Coanda in GTP Car 18. They've had a big issue here. Charlie Collins and Xander Reed, last year's champion Collins. This is not what they want to see. They're going to lose a lap here for sure.
And this, I think, might even be terminal for them. I've seen Chris Lullum in the BMW M Team Redline car. So the race leader, the pole sitter, into pit lane as well. Madness within the first 5 minutes of this race. We'll take a look at the replay. We'll figure out what happened. But I said 2 hours and 40 minutes to kick off a championship that is only just over 10 hours in length. Could this be a race that spells your story of a championship run, or leave you languishing in obscurity for a couple of drivers? There may be something to look for. They are through some traffic, so I'm wondering here, Joey, could it have been something to do with that? And Williams Esports Chill Blast, Jaden Munoz, has blown clear 2.6 seconds at the front of the field.
These GTP cars are going to have to manage all of that GTD traffic, and to your point, Arjuna, I think that's exactly what happened to that prototype. I think a GT car basically spun coming out of turn 7, and everybody had to avoid. The prototypes came up on it, and there was nowhere to go.
You can see there as well, looked like the surviving Coanda machine just got stuck behind the second of the Drago entries. 3 wide to turn 1 with one of the Fords, that's Sontec Racing, trying to fight their way on forward as well. And this is where it gets interesting, the overlap of GTDs fighting their own little battles and GTP trying to make their way through as well. And this is that fight for second, not trying to lose too much time, and so a slingshot into the S's before they get stuck up through turn number 5, and then onto the hybrid they'll spool themselves once more, and Peter try and pull away from those chasing them down.
And that's where the GTP cars really come into their own, with that combined internal combustion and electric power plant coming up to about 670 horsepower. So they've got big power, but they're rear-wheel drive only. Unlike a Le Mans hypercar spec where you can have 4-wheel drive, they're only rear-wheel drive, so they can be quite peaky and they can really spin the rears. You've got to be quite progressive on the throttle as you come out of the corner. But once they do hook up, brilliant for dispatching with traffic, as we're seeing right now.
Oh, and well, the Coanda GTP almost running into the back of its sister car Rexy there. You could just see how desperate some of these drivers are to minimize their time loss in this first cycle of traffic when it's the most bunched up. That's a good look, though, from Casey Kerwin, who we heard it in the pre-show. It was a great result for him and Owen Carroll at the end of last year, Joey, to win at Daytona. They had threatened, they'd shown some speed, and they finally put that race together. And now sitting third, less than 10 minutes into this one, their championship fight starting on a great forward foot.
Sometimes you just need something to kind of push the ball down the hill and then continue and carry that momentum. And sometimes it's a race win, sometimes it's consistent finishes, but you're right. It's working out, that number 95 with Casey Kerwin behind the wheel right now, sitting in third place overall in the prototypes. And in my opinion, if you look at the grand scheme of the race, the big horizon, the most nervous part's probably already done. You've gotten through the GTD field the first time. It'll be more strung out the second time through.
Well, we showed you the aftermath of the chaos. Let's try and figure out and unpack exactly what happened. So this is through turn 6, entering into 7, and so a lunge from Door Esports in the Ford Mustang on Scherer, our Michelin wildcard. That unsettles them, then a little bit of attack to Impulse, and then, well, the GTPs arrive on the scene, and I don't even know what you can say if you're the BMW M Team Redline team, Peter, except hold your brakes when you know there's cars coming.
Forgive me, I'm just catching my breath watching that one.
Speechless.
Absolute carnage. Rotten luck, you've got to say, for the leading prototype. They're coming through, minding their own business. They come around the corner, and it's just cars everywhere. I mean, I said it was like rush hour traffic, but not a highway pileup. My goodness.
It's a great replay, just able to show us all of what happened from that one perspective as well. Have noted the BMW M Team Redline back out onto track after 40 seconds stationary for IMSA Esports in the number 18. Yet to see Charlie Collins back out onto track. Expecting there's a bit more lasting damage for him. Relatively unscathed for BMW M Team Redline, who stay on the lead lap, which, Joey, 2 hours and 30 minutes to go. They've still got a chance if it's an outside chance.
That's kind of what you need to do, is that if you can't swim up front, you at least need to tread water and keep your head above that water line. That's exactly what that BMW M Team Redline number 20 car is doing. They're still on the lead lap. Is it going to be the best finish ultimately? No, probably not. You're going to have some help with probably others' mistakes as we get some action here on the front straightaway, looking down here into turn number 1.
We'll tell you, our champion last year in the GTP class didn't win a single race. They got 2 second-place finishes, yes, to close out the season, but a 6th and 7th in the first 2 rounds. GTP has been wild since it was introduced both in the real and virtual worlds. Not expecting it to be any different here for BMW M Team Redline. They've got to keep their heads high and avoid losing too much momentum. That was momentum being lost for the Williams Esports Racing prodigy. BMW M Hybrid up the inside for one of our CrowdStrike racing cars, who are making some good headway right now to slowly charge their way forward. That's 4 positions now gained for Marcus Hamilton.
Great stuff from the Acura there for CrowdStrike Racing, making that move very opportunistic. I'm going to look for some positives here. If you are in those 2 leading GTP cars, it's a total disaster really to have those GTD cars all spinning in front and they end up in an incident. But if you're in the GTP class where there are less cars, if you have a bad day, it's not as punishing. If you make a mistake and if you have a bad day in GTD, you're going to lose so many points because the field is just so big. So in GTP, it really is worth it to just keep going, get the car fixed as much as possible, and you never know what could come your way, because I'm convinced of it that we will see more incidents, because it's so typical at Road Atlanta. We've seen it so many times at Petit Le Mans over the years. In fact, at Motel Petit Le Mans this year, everyone was flabbergasted because I had a big long run of green flag, which they very, very rarely see. So be patient for that. There is going to be a bit of that to contend with. So those who had issues early on, they've just got to grind it out and get the best result they can.
And I guess one thing to keep in mind for today's race as well, no rain on the forecast for the drivers, so they don't have the threat of the unpredictability, which is really where it becomes interesting. I think Williams Esports Racing Prodigy has a problem here, or are they doing something on strategy? Because Alexander Spetz bleeding positions right now, and I think he's just let Patrick Wolf go in the fiercely forward car as well. I think this might just be a bit of a case of sit back and relax, not what I think Sven Haas is thinking as we look on board with the driver behind the wheel of the 102, Sven Haas, a grid and go machine, a driver that is known for pushing the tempo. Let's see if he's going to push the tempo down into the chicane as well.
Driving this Ferrari, it's actually Ferrari 123 right now in the GTD class. Jump on the brakes right here for turn number 10. It's all pretty equal distant between each one of these Ferraris, the 170, the 102, and then the 171, just all kind of setting a very, very similar pace right now. And I know that this is very early days. I wonder if some of these drivers are physically just running a number, and I'm talking about running a fuel number, and if they're already starting to save a little bit of that fuel looking at the big picture.
Gap between these two drivers has somewhat stabilized given the relative gap back to the Drago 168. That's now, I think, through that traffic cycle being slightly put back and trying to now reel its way back in. But it's said so often, the traffic will take, the traffic will give. Unfortunately, race control usually takes away quite a bit. Drive-through penalty for the Vesta Sport 152, contact with the 196, and so I'm guessing, Peter, this is part of all of the shenanigans that we saw out of turn number 7.
Yeah, race control definitely kicked into action very, very quickly in the early couple of laps here at Road Atlanta for this AMD 240. You can see the Williams car there. I don't think it was strategy. There's some sort of issue for the number 33 Williams Prodigy car. kind of get some damage repaired, get on there and get some new Michelin tyres as well while they're in the pit stop, fill up with energy as well. Interesting to see the Ferraris being so strong at the front of the field. It's a 1-2-3 for Ferrari right now. Of course, they won the GTD category at Moto Petit Le Mans and indeed the GTD Pro category at Daytona. So that 296 GT3 straight out the box, a very strong package.
And I guess it's interesting, right, because if I remember correctly, Team Redline actually ran the Ford Mustang during the iRacing Petit Le Mans a couple of weeks ago, powered by VCO, and so from what I heard, the car had a bit of a fuel advantage that they were able to take advantage of, but it's clear maybe in the shorter race, maybe strategy, I don't want to say less important, but less time to work with it. They clearly think the Ferrari was the car to pick, and it goes back to the process by which teams earned the car they're racing in, because Joey, for the very first time, teams went through the car shootout. There are 4 of each car in each class, and you had to be one of the fastest 4 teams in order to get that car. And so there was a really interesting weekend where teams were deciding, am I quick enough in this car, or is Team Redline going for the Ferrari, and do I need to go and try for another manufacturer?
I think it's a really neat concept because, one, we have all equal representation from the manufacturers. We don't necessarily have horses for courses out here, as well as the BOP on top of it. So I do think it was a very neat way to essentially organize all of the different manufacturers of cars and classes between the teams, have equal representation, but still let the teams go out there and fight for what they want to drive.
Noting a couple more penalties from race control, but for the most part, I think the initial start was clean. It was after that where we had a little bit more. Still watching through the traffic though. AO Racing, Rexy is going to see Casey Kerwin sit behind. Of course, former eNASCAR champion continuing though, just to show his versatility. Raced this year with Spire Motorsports, now partnered up with the Channel 199, of course, partnered with Travis Pastrana, and that was intelligence right there through the traffic. You saw him lay back initially and then close up on the run to the apex, Peter, trying to minimize the time he loses without causing stress to the GTD.
And that just shows you the adaptability of Casey Kerwin, winning that NASCAR iRacing Coca-Cola Championship 2 years ago. And he's been so good on the roadside as well, but just picking his way through traffic really smartly in this Cadillac. And the one thing that's familiar to him, of course, is the big thumping V8, albeit behind him rather than in front of him. But the soundtrack is similar.
Some interesting engines that we've got as well for some of these GTP cars. I love the story of the Acura, right? An engine meant in many ways for IndyCar, and now repurposed for what is, in my opinion, one of the best sounding hybrids, because of how high it revs. Just one of those things. Top and bottom, race for the lead, of course. 3 cars are broken away. And then the bottom of the screen, where just behind Drago Racing now, a bit of separation, I would say, starting to build to Valkyrie Competition and Team PGZ. That was mighty close. Off pit exit, 1 car leaving. GTP's coming. This is why this track is so difficult to manage and why it's such an interesting test to open up the season.
It's fun to watch though, right? It's a lot on the plate for the drivers to handle, but you got to do it. And it's the same for everybody out there. I think that we haven't really mentioned pit exit a whole lot. I mean, it feeds directly onto drivers right on the racing line, essentially. And the prototypes carry a ton of speed. So I think it's a major funnel point between the 2 classes. We're going to have to watch it as the pit stop cycles go through. And we already almost had our first little kerfuffle there.
Kerfuffle. I think we'll say that plenty this season. Indy next time out is going to be quite interesting. Couple of weeks off between round 1 and 2, and then our final 2 races are in 2025 and all build up to the Rolex 24. So going to be quite intriguing and exciting to see how things develop, especially with a new iRacing build and not far away as well. Another penalty has come down, and this one is for the Grid and Go 103. So the second of the cars in line, contact with the 156. So that's the 56 Racing Chevrolet that I'm assuming through turn number 1. We saw him go wide, and race control's deemed that Ferrari's at fault, Peter.
That's a disaster at this stage to drop back. They're running very strongly. So for Dino Lombardi and Cody Deeth, they've got a lot of work to do. Dino Lombardi, a former motorcycle, a competitive place to start motorcycle racing, that's for sure. In the 600 Superstock Championship, former champion there. And also a penalty for the 121 Ford Mustang are not holding the brakes after an incident. So that's something that we see quite a lot of at a lower level, where the cars are kind of left to roll around after an incident, and it can create more incidents. So the drivers are told, hold your brakes in the event of an accident. And yeah, another penalty, rubbing salt in the wound.
Well, and ultimately as well, when it comes to the penalties, you already saw the amount of damage on that car. It's more... It's not really going to do too much to bring back the race for the other impacted teams, but I think for BMW M Team Redline, who was the car that ran into that Ford Mustang failing to hold the brakes, at least there's some sort of punishment handed down for the initial action itself. Noting that race control, keeping an eye on track limits, by the way, there's one team that's already about halfway, inside of 20 minutes to kick off this season, halfway to getting a penalty for using up track limits too much. And that's interesting. Why? Because, Joey, we always say, if you want to punish drivers, put grass, put walls. What have we done at Road Atlanta? We've done exactly that, and we're still talking about track limits.
I think here in the virtual world, the drivers definitely, they take advantage of them a little bit more, especially jumping up and over curves. And I think one of the areas that you can definitely get caught out is right here, turns 10A, 10B. You can actually cut those apex curves a little bit too much. And if you go way too far, you can actually get a slowdown. But then also on the very, very exit, if you got a little bit of a loose car on the very exit of the corner, it's tough to try to put the power down and keep it from running way off track there, drivers left. So I think another hot area, jumping the curb right here at the top of the hill at turn 3.
And, you know, I just got back from the NOLA Motorsports Park, and one thing that I was really watching there, and I guess you don't feel it as much in the sim, but it will be there, is that a lot of times on the exit of curves, it's not a nice place to be. There will be a really big divot, and that's a place that's not just uncomfortable for the driver, it can be dangerous for the car. And so, again, I think that's maybe one of those things in sim racing where you can be a little bit more pushy with something that in the real world you'll be a little bit more reticent to go out there and run, because if you break a car, a crew chief's going to tell you off for doing so. You might not get back into the car any time soon. 20 minutes done means we're only around 20-25 minutes away from the first cycle of GTP pit stops. And now there's 2 drivers in each team, and you've got to try and manage your drive time as well. But Peter, this race cannot be broken up into equal halves, and so every team's got to figure out which is their faster driver and who are they going to put in the car for the most amount of time.
And that's exactly the same as in the real life IMSA champion there, IMSA WeatherTech Championship, whether that be in GTP, where the drivers are a little bit closer because they're mostly factory drivers in that category, but in GTD, where you've got a Pro-Am setup, that's very, very important. Of course, here in the virtual world, at this level, they're all pretty similar, but there will always be a driver who's just got more of a feeling or more of a click with the circuit and the car on that circuit. And if you've got a driver who's even half a tenth quicker per lap, you've got to put them in for more time. You've got to maximize their time. Or in the same way, if you've got a driver who's maybe struggling and just not gelling with the circuit, you want to minimize their driving time as much as you can. Every tiny little advantage or disadvantage is so important at this level. And remember, of course, we don't have safety cars either. It's not like in the IMSA WeatherTech Championship where you'll see things reset and you might want to always put your strongest driver in at the end. But here, every little bit of time you lose, it's gone.
That's why sometimes we see drivers pushing a bit more, and of course, penalties starting to continue to accumulate. Another one there for the Grid and Go Porsche GTP, which had just served it as well, has now dropped down to 13th position. Still on the lead lap. BMW M Team BS Plus competition slice up the inside of Team PGZ, still hotly pursued by Casey Kerwin for Channel 199, and they're only 1.3 seconds now behind the Williams Esports Chill Blast BMW that leads the race. A little bit of a slide there out of turn 7, but once more through the traffic, it's closing up again. And I'm not really getting the sense there's too much fuel saving from these drivers, Joey. They're all pushing, trying to get the most of the traffic.
I've been watching on the last couple laps, and I gotta say, I'm very impressed with both Daniel in the 89 and also Casey as we got one of the GTD cars. You see, that was the Mustang with heavy damage, just getting out of the way. That was actually a nice move right there. But back to my point, these prototype drivers have been very, very patient. Casey hasn't forced the issue with Daniel. He's been patient going through the GTD traffic. Yeah, he's right on the bumper and sometimes underneath the spoiler saying, hey, you better get a move on, but he's not not putting his car in dangerous areas. He's not forcing Daniel to make dangerous moves on the GTDs. It does seem like they're trying to get through it together.
It's nice and efficient, or hopefully building to a bit of a blockbuster at the end. Last year we did have in the GT Daytona category between what ended up being the championship rivals, Mercedes AMG Team Apex Racing Team and Team Redline, a fight all the way to the very end. And I still remember Ole Steinbraten out of turn 7, this corner right here, just didn't get the best run, and instantly you saw it on the webcam, frustrated with himself. He knew the race was over. There was nothing he could do after that. We're watching those still as they get to the front now of the Qtris and Iglesias in that Rexy liveried AO Racing by Kawanda 118, sits in 5th position in class, currently about 7.5 seconds behind your race leader. And so this second cycle through, I guess 3rd, 4th, whatever it is, gridandgo.com and the 102 starting to fall back from your race leaders. Here's a look at some of that traffic management though.
And this is the bird's eye view of what it's like to try and get through the traffic. Oh, you're just having to make 50-50 decisions all the time. Coming through the final corner here, so much speed, just splitting that Corvette. Imagine being in the cockpit of that Corvette and you see two basically ground level fighter jets going either side, and you've just got to hold your nerve and hold your position. Being a GT driver is tough when you've got prototypes going around. I do like it how we've seen with the arrival of GTP and the success of GTP, how many manufacturers have come to the table. Many drivers who were previously GT drivers who had prototypes going around them, they've now gone into prototypes, and it's a little bit like poacher turned gamekeeper or gamekeeper turned poacher, whichever way you look at it, and they're kind of getting the taste of their own medicine a little bit and seeing what it's about.
The prey becomes the predator kind of thing. I'm picking up what you're putting down. And yeah, so being true in both the full metal world with a lot of the factory drivers going from GT up to prototype, but also here in the sim as well. You're very correct there. And just checking out our Michelin wildcard entry, this is a team that's not quite at the prototype level, but you know, we've seen them plenty in the sim world in Porsche Cup cars. Now stepping up to a GT Daytona. Could a prototype be the next evolution for Julian Reimer, for Raphael Renhofer? Windshield wipers going off, not quite sure it's needed here today on what is a bone dry day up I-85 from Atlanta. We're about an hour 45 minutes or so from the airport, assuming there's no traffic. If you get stuck in traffic, the ring road becomes a race in and of itself. Because of all the chaos though that Joey we had, I think, with the GTPs going through traffic the first time, they got separated out, and I think in many ways the race has settled down into a nice rhythm early doors.
It has settled down, but when I look at the gaps, they're not too far apart, especially in the top 5. So that kind of lends strategy cards still being able to be played on the table. You can have the chance at an undercut or potentially an overcut if the driver and those spotters kind of look on the horizon of what's to come in the next couple laps. Are you going to get held up by GT traffic, or are you going to have a clean racetrack? Are you going to pop out in that clean racetrack in order to do maximum pace on what is probably a fresh set of tires? So yeah, it is a nice rhythm, but it is still close enough that strategy can be played.
And strategy that maybe later on in the season, again, we might have the threat of rain, so I always love seeing the struggles of drivers trying to figure out what tire to be on at the right time, and even the best sometimes to make the wrong decision, and that could end up impacting a race at the very closing stages. If you get a little bit of a drizzle start to sprinkle itself on one side of the racetrack, but maybe a little bit more dry on the other end of the equation. Still watching these GTD cars roll around, and it's great having IMSA Esports back, and it's also great that we're in the best time of year to either jump onto iRacing or to stay in the world of iRacing. The biggest iRacing sale of the year is back, 25% off 1 or 2 year subscriptions for active and expired members, and new users can get 50% off to join their iRacing journey. Maybe you could be part of the 2025 IMSA Esports Global Championship. Remember, we had public qualifiers via the iRacing time attacks to find the fastest 48 teams. Look up the inside there from Drago, trying to make a move on what does seem to be a rather damaged Johan Half-powered Apex Racing Team machine. Shot the rear bumper, not sure it's slowing the car down. Gives some draft to Williams Esports, running down the back straightaway.
The straight line speed doesn't look too bad despite that damage at the rear of the car, which is good news for Johan Hart and the Apex Racing team. And hopefully when they're in for their scheduled pit stop, they'll be able to do a little bit of repair and try and kind of repair that on the fly as they go, but managed to hold it well along the back straight there. And of course we saw in the TFZ Lab BOP that car has had a little bit of power taken away from it, but still no problem at all with the straight line speed of that honking great 6.2 litre V8.
All this unfolding as we start to get closer and closer to pit stops for the GTPs. These GTDs go about an hour on fuel, so they could come in around an hour and 40 minutes left in the race, but expect the GTPs to come in about 10 or so minutes time. Maybe some trying a bit of an undercut, get out of a little bit of traffic from those in front of them. Remember, we've got a couple of cars who have broken away at the front of the GTP field. It is still Williams Esports Chill Blast that leads from the BMW M Team BS Plus competition. Danny Lorenzo on the hunt of Jaden Munoz with Channel 199 Sim Racing directly behind them.
Looks like the Lamborghini and really just this entire train from the 198. They include the 169, the 116, and also that Door Esports number 120, all in this kind of GTD line here. I've been trying to pay attention to it. I think the only real position change was actually that Mercedes. That 105 passed the Lamborghini, the 169 last time by, as we check back in on Casey Kerwin here in the 95.
Yeah, remember, expecting some of these drivers to maybe come down into pit lane, and they're really starting to dive into the thick of all the traffic. So let's jump on board with the Cadillac and see on board from a perspective of a race winner here in the IMSA Esports Global Championship what it's like, presented by Thrustmaster. Slicing and dicing through the traffic, all as the lead compresses. 3 cars within 1.2 seconds, and Danny Lorenzo, the Zebra's galloped up to the back of Williams Esports Chill Blast, slides up the inside of the PGZ Porsche, and now there's maybe a car length between the two of them. But right before the pit stop window, there's got to be a decision here. Do you go for the move, or do you try and get it done in pit lane? And Peter, I'm almost thinking right here through all the traffic, I'd want to come down to pit lane and get out of all of this, especially if I'm 3 wide up to 3.
Yeah, this is where a good spotter and a good team strategist comes through, as bang, hip and shoulder as the BS competition GTP car comes through and nerfs one of the Lamborghinis out of the way. That's classic Road Atlanta, and that's when you're in the lead fight, you'll risk so much more and give so much less compromise there, and that's what happened. And you've got to be careful though with that side-to-side contact. You can easily bend steering and cause damage to the car, so you've got to be careful. But this is getting really frantic, and we've still got 2 hours and 8 minutes to go.
And that is the BMW M Team Redline car. Remember, pole sitter involved in an incident that saw them come down to pit lane in the leading pack, but down a lap and just trying to stay in touch with the leaders as well. So keep an eye on the slightly darker blue machine. Might let Casey Kerwin and the Channel 199 Cadillac on through in this 3-way fight for the lead. And indeed, quite respectful there from Chris Lullen to avoid holding up any of the contenders up front for the time being in this AMD 240. On the screen as well, you can see there is a bit of a queue building up behind our Michelin wildcard Share Esports. Got Drago Racing, Door Esports, and then Johan Hart, of course, missing that rear bumper. But these are drivers, I think, who, now that they're outside of the top 10 in the early stages, Joey, they're trying to just work their way through, right? And like we were talking about with spotters and whatnot in the ear, you'll have an engineer trying to coach them through some strategy and maybe some fuel numbers to the end.
You always got to stay up on a, call it an audible, right? If you don't have the track position that you want, you need to quickly adapt, quickly call an audible, and yeah, to your point, listen to your team manager, listen to your spotter to see where those gaps are, or maybe where another car is actually a little bit faster than you. But I've been trying to keep an eye on this fight out front with these prototype cars, it is definitely cranked up a notch. And talk about at the most tense times coming up to that pit stop window too.
It's a tricky pit entry. How do I know? I've crashed my fair share there practicing. Never done it in a race. It's not a lie. Not a lie whatsoever. Jaden Munoz, though, has got a bit more now of clean air behind, and I've got to assume that the BMW M Team BS competition car is being reported to the stewards for that bit of contact. Also probably assuming they are going to get a probable drive-through penalty, which at a track like this is maybe not terrible, Peter, because it costs you around 20 seconds. But think about Daytona, right? Especially where the pit exit line is, because you've got to wrap your way all the way around turns 1 and to the middle of the chicane leading to the International Horseshoe. Drive-through penalty there can cost you maybe 30 or 40 seconds, so it's a lot more impactful to the overall race.
Getting a drive-through penalty anywhere at this level tends to be pretty destructive. That's the thing, is that it's so tight, and again, without the intervention of full course yellows and safety cars, you just don't have that opportunity to fight back. When you lose that time, it's gone. You've got to try and recover it, and the fact is that at this level, really difficult to be able to do that. So that's very important to watch out for, to try and minimize those penalties, to avoid those penalties. But at this circuit, more than any other, as we've seen several times already, it's so easy to pick one up, because you get in a 50-50 situation where you've got to either back right out of it or go for it and hope that the other driver doesn't turn in on you. And that is, sometimes it's a luck call, sometimes it's just a quick judgment call and it works your way or it doesn't. And that's what makes this so exciting to watch, because it's a real tightrope that particularly the prototype drivers are walking on.
It's a tightrope that you can only get experience with in the situations as well. You can't sit there in a practice session really and get that real experience. You need the adrenaline pumping when you're making those split-second calls. Scott Michaels, always great seeing the sim rig that he's got ensconced in a little mini chassis, racing from Southampton alongside his brother Sam Michaels. Gets onto the power and sitting behind right now the race clutch number 23, piloted by Sean Campbell, who has raced in all 3 of our IMSA Esports Championships so far, and now in 3 different categories as well: touring cars, GTDs, and in the prototypes. Great seeing some diversity from these drivers as well.
It's also cool to see the manufacturer battle here, right? The Acura versus that red Cadillac right out in front. I know they're both technically red and black cars there, but that number 23 is that Cadillac, and then that engine, that Acura engine, Arjuna, that you were talking about, is powering this number 4 car that is giving chase, trying to find a way around that big old Cadillac in front.
And the manufacturer battle currently has 2 BMWs up front in the GTPs, Cadillac 3rd, Porsche 4th, and then the best of the Acuras is CrowdStrike sitting 7th and 8th positions. But the one thing that CrowdStrike would like to point out, I think, is how consistent they were last year in this category. In the Acura, finished 4th at the end of the season, just by finishing in the top 10 in every single one of the races. A podium on their way as well to that championship finish, so staying out of trouble. They didn't stay out of trouble at Road Atlanta, to be fair, so it's already a better start to their season this time around, as here comes what might be a scheduled stop, as I think maybe the Mercedes AMG Apex Racing Team car, with all that damage, maybe now tries to work one more pit stop after this to the end of the race. Here's a look at the replay.
So this is, it's the tiniest nudge there from the Miniti McLaren, and that was enough to turn him around. The rear of the car already had some damage, and Johan now waiting for his turn. He's at the junction, he's at the stoplight, then he finally gets going. Yeah, not easy. That's a blind bit of the circuit there, so the cars are coming over the crest of the hills. That was the worst possible place for Johan to be. But he gets back going again, and it's going to be really difficult actually from there to make it home on one more stop after this one, because those GTD cars go around an hour. They're going to have to do fuel save all the way home from here, are that AMG team, Apex Racing Team.
Well, I'm just getting word that the 198 actually was down on pit lane for a penalty for contact with the Mahler Racing Team. That saw Mahler retire at the early stages of the race, so you can see the other Mercedes Apex car has lost the front end. Not been an easy start for that team in this particular class. Now, in the GTP, Maxime Briant's Apex Racing 99 is sat in 12th. a team that has won plenty of races in this championship, is really on the back foot to kick things off. And fuel saving at Road Atlanta is one of those things, Joey, where I remember when I've run a few iRacing Petit Le Mans here and there, you can actually get into a pretty good rhythm at this track because it's so flowing, because you're carrying momentum in so many places, makes it a bit easier to avoid the temptation to roll onto the brake.
You're right, and especially if you're a prototype and you can be good at reading that traffic. You see that drive-through penalty for that car 198 that we just saw that replay from right there. So they not only have the damage to the back bumper, but they had to do that drive-through as well. But back to saving fuel, I think in the prototypes it can be even easier, especially if you see that you're going to get held up by that GT traffic. Let's say if you're coming down the hill towards turn number 5 and there's no way that you can get through 5 GT cars. Well, if you got no pressure out the rear view mirror, you can simply let off the gas and coast all the way down that hill. You got that in a few different areas, but it's up to the driver to manage those gaps.
That's fiercely forward around the outside, and that's a fierce move to say the very least. Paddy Wolf makes it work on Marcus Hamilton down under the Fox Factory Bridge. It's not a typical passing opportunity, but Peter, it does take 2 to tango, and both work together to make it work.
Yeah, great respect there, but that takes serious bravery to go around the outside at turn 12, because you can get shown the wall there very easily. But first our kind of scheduled GTP pit stop, race clutch red in from in there from 12th position, Jere Lehtinen bringing that car in, the Cadillac for them. But yeah, it's those 2 Apex cars. We're so used to seeing Apex Racing Team GTD cars running at the front, of whether it be in an iRacing special event or indeed in this championship as well. Pretty disastrous for both of them to have incidents, but the Mala Racing Team car, the 110, which was involved in one of those incidents, which got the penalty for the Apex Racing Team, they're out. So it must have been a fairly serious incident.
Yeah, and so is BS Turner from what I believe. So both cars powered by BS Competition start this season off on a bit of a down note as more take us to pit lane. Here comes the number 3, so Marcus Hamilton. Roll his way into lane in the Acura, and we'll see if he stays in or if he gets out of the car. Going back to the Apex Racing Team, by the way, they won the first 5 races in IMSA Esports history in that GT Daytona category. All 4 races in 2022, the first race of 2023. They also won another race later on in the season, but yeah, this is a bit of a shock, to say the very least. A similar sort of shock to the BMW M Team Redline incident from pole position, getting tangled up through traffic the very first time of asking. Speaking of traffic, by the way, Joey, I think Casey Kerwin's lost a whole bunch of time. 4 seconds now behind those in front of him, and suddenly Coanda Esports and Mitchell de Jong, alongside Augustin Canapino and Solpec Precision Racing, starting to look closer and closer.
That number 95 is going to have to pay attention to his rear view mirrors, because you're right. I think both Mitchell and also Canapino, they've been a little bit more aggressive trying to work their way through traffic, and you're right. They have closed in what was probably about 2 seconds, maybe 2.5 seconds back behind that number channel, or that channel 199, number 95, and now they're right on the tail. You can see them right at the top of the hill there. There is maybe 2 GTD cars separating them, but as we always say, the traffic giveth and the traffic also taketh. Look at how close these 2 are.
That got very uncomfortable for a second. You can see how much time they lost because the Porsche behind closed up as well. Spool up the hybrid. Can he take advantage if you're Augustin Canapino? Just a little bit too far behind. Lets off that throttle, releases the pressure, and now maybe sets things up out of turn 7. And it's a corner that it looks so simple, but it's something I harp on quite a lot. It's tighter than 90 degrees, and so you've got to be so patient when you get to the throttle. And Joey, I can see you nodding your head. It's one of the things that when drivers say they're losing time there, I go, so you're getting on the throttle too early, aren't you?
Well, and turn 6 is so different because turn 6 actually has a little bit of banking and camber that feeds into that little tiny short chute straightaway between 6 and 7. And then it's completely flat on entry, so you're hard on the brakes. All the weight is on the front end. You got to get it to bite. And then the most important part is actually before apex, because you got to get on the gas by then. If you drive it too far up over that left side curve, it can also disrupt the power down traction event. So you got to pay attention on entry, not to overspeed, and then you also have to be more crucial on exit because it leads you out onto that straightaway.
And especially with these GTPs, I sometimes feel like you just get all the power, so it's really difficult sometimes with cold tires. And so I'm wondering, we're watching the 3 of Marcus Hamilton, that's out wide, and he skates straight. It's almost like you're beached on the curb. Great job though, Peter, to avoid running off into the wall, because that could have been some more damage, and a return to pit lane.
Yeah, really good effort there, because when you get on the ice, when you get on the grass here, it is like ice. You might as well call it ice. And he did so well to just avoid the wall and keep the damage away, because these prototypes can be pretty fragile, and tiny bit of damage can cause a big drop in performance. And again, I think we'll need to get a bingo card going for how many times I say at this level, because this level is so competitive, and if you're giving away even a couple of tenths a lap for damage, you're going to be nowhere.
This is a track as well which the curbs can be unforgiving for damage, so sometimes it's better to take a bit less margin and be a bit safer. As much as we were talking earlier about the dangers maybe of curves in the real world being a bit scarier for drivers, and just understanding that the tenths that you may lose towards the end of the race may put you in a difficult situation. Jaden Munoz, by the way, it's been a real breakout year for him in many ways, Peter. Joined up with Williams Esports towards the end of last year. Just finished up competing in the IndyCar Butt Kicker iRacing Pro Series, where he made a pretty good account of himself in a car he's quite unfamiliar with. And now he's been given the call-up to race for Williams in a 2-pronged effort in the GTP class, and he's leading 45 minutes into the race.
And I think there's a great crossover between an Indy car and the GTP car. High downforce. Really, I think the two really work together very, very well. And Jaden Munoz is showing his start quality at the front of the field at the moment. 1.5 seconds to the good from the other BMW, the BMW M Team BS competition of Daniel Alves Larenko. Enzo Benito, the 171 Team Redline car, sitting in third right now. Redline leading Gianni Vecchio, last year's champion, leading the race, but Redline in third there, just showing just how strong an outfit they are with those Ferrari 296 GT3s, and that appears to be, certainly here at Road Atlanta, appears to be a strong package. But will it be when we go to Indy or to Sebring or to Daytona that could turn right?
And all the teams participate in the BOP process, so that's something to keep in mind. Best hair maybe in sim racing, by the way, for Enzo Benito. Don't know quite how he's managed to keep it standing, at least with all the intensity that we've seen so far. A bit more of an extension of the window for Simufy. We'll see them come in, again, around 45 minutes since the drop of the green flag. It means they've gone around 40 laps or so. We're still waiting for the leaders who have extended the stint even further. And Joey, I always say, if you're trying to do something on strategy, you must commit from the start. You can't commit 40 minutes into the race, because by that time you've already lost the train.
That's the key. You cannot start late on the fuel saving. You have to start it from the beginning, and you can't say, okay, well, I'm going to do 3 laps in a sprint and then I'll get to it. You have to start it from the beginning, because it is fractional. It is just such small amounts, and it then adds up over time, over consistent laps, over continuous laps. And we talked about it a little bit earlier. If you're in one of these prototypes and you see some traffic on the horizon as we get more action down pit lane, this is, I believe, number 99 coming down here, but you can save even more. So start from the beginning, take every opportunity that you can to save even more, and it will put you in the spot that you need to be at the end of the stint.
I'm one of those people as well that I'm not very good at strategy. I once ran out of fuel coming out of turn 4 during an iRacing Indy 500. Ran over by Adrian Fernandez before I got to the yard of bricks. That's a story I could tell plenty of times. But yeah, we saw some drivers last year run out of fuel on the final lap. I'm just saying, even the best make mistakes. Race Clutch have gone 1 lap longer than the rest of the GTPs. Look how busy it is. Williams, BS Competition, Channel 199, Kawanda, Solpet Precision, CrowdStrike fiercely forward. Peter, it's a pit party.
So consumer advice here, if you want to save fuel, you need to get yourself a 5.5 litre V8 in your car. That's going to save you some fuel, because it's the Cadillac that goes a lap longer, and that can make a difference. That can make a big difference, because also it's a little bit too busy in pit lane right now.
It's going to be an interesting merge. It was one thing that was talked about in the drivers' briefing. Expectation from drivers as they rejoin the racing surface from pit lane. Relatively lengthy stops for them all as well. They're going to change tires and fuel. They'll do it at the same time as well, much like in the real-world IMSA competitions. They're able to go up on the jack stands with fuel going into the car as well, and then off and away they will roll. Does seem as though Jaden Munoz has got a big lead. Danny Lorenzo has been jumped by the Channel 199 sim racing team because we've had some strategy happening down in pit lane, Joey.
Yeah, there's a difference in those times in that stop there. It seems like Jaden Munoz in that number 5 car, only about a 35-second stop. Casey Kerwin, a 34-second stop. And then Lorenzo, to your point, a 40-second stop. That is key right there. That is going to lose a ton of track position. It's going to be curious. Is that a short fill? Is it extra fill? I don't know.
Always love seeing the slight windows drivers have with which to balance how they want to approach the race. Did mention there is also that drive time limit they've got to factor in, but most drivers aren't really thinking about that. It's about the VP Racing fuel and the Michelin's going onto the car. Right on board with Munoz, down under the bridge to the final corner. Slingshots past 2 GTD cars on his way to the line. We know Race Clutch is going to be sitting there just a little bit longer and filling up the fuel. It's been now exactly 34 seconds since Sean Campbell entered the box. I think what we know here, Peter, he's topping that car off and he's trying to extend the next stint as far as he can.
So yeah, they're going for, save as much fuel as possible, go a lap longer if you can, do a long stretch, and then, like you say, go for a quick sprint at the end. So let's see if that one works out here. There's so many different ways to look at this strategical conundrum. Drive-through penalty again. The stewards and the race controller are certainly busy. The 178 drive-through penalty, that's the Magneti McLaren contact with car 198, which is the AMG Mercedes Team ART. That car has certainly been in the wars.
A magnet, I think, for contact today, to say the very least. And again, a team so dominant in the first 5 races of the IMSA Esports history. Slightly less dominance to start off this season. It's a slice and dice to the inside, as easy as you would like from BMW M Team BS Plus competition. Maybe a bit of recognition there from Casey Kerwin, Joey, that it's better for him to sit behind, save a bit more fuel, and ride with a charging zebra in front of him.
That's exactly what he did. He's pretty much just going to sit in the tire tracks right now of that 89 and try to save the most amount of fuel that he can. What it really draws my eye, though, is because that 89 had such a long stop putting all that fuel in the car, that gap to our leader is now grown to 7.5 seconds. It was only about 1.5, maybe 2 at most when they came into pit lane.
One thing I'm noting, as much as there's been a flurry of penalties overall, a much cleaner race from race control's perspective, as we had a year ago to kick off this IMSA Esports Global Championship, again at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. We totaled almost 100 penalty reports over the course of our 2 hours and 40 minutes, not trending even half as close so far with about an hour done. Fight for second really has slipped behind your race leader in the GT Daytonas, and the defending champions Gianni Vecchio and Team Redline broken clear to the tune of 4.4 seconds. Sven Haas is feeling the pressure. Enzo Benito's tucked up behind, but it is Ferrari 1 through 3 right now. We'll have to figure out, though, Peter, is there something different that we're going to see on strategy?
Well, do they have the fuel mileage to go with the performance, with the lap speed? I mean, to be honest, even if the Ferraris don't quite have the game on fuel economy, they're so quick that it honestly doesn't matter. They've got a big gap back to the other cars, and that 296 GT3 really going strong. It's built on a Ferrari design, but actually manufactured by Orica. And many of the drivers I've spoken to who have driven it and raced it, in fact, Felipe Fernandez-Lazar, who won the Nürburgring 24-hour in it in 2023, says it's the closest GT car he's ever driven to an LMP3 prototype. He says it really feels like driving an LMP3 prototype, that because of the way the chassis is constructed, etc. It's a seriously well-balanced car.
And of course as well, not just the balance of the car, something the manufacturers think about, but the way they design it so they can fix it during races as well. I think about the Mercedes with a lack of rear bumper. Last year in the Nürburgring 24, the way that race was won was the ability for the Ferrari to have its entire rear assembly effectively swapped out in about 2 or 3 minutes. So every time that a manufacturer releases a new car in racing, don't just think it's about because they need to release a new car, especially with these Evo updates that sometimes the manufacturers are doing. There are very, very crucial quality of life improvements, and maybe as well ways to make the cars cost a little bit less, because we know how expensive racing has gone. Anything you can do to make it a bit cheaper per hour would maybe be a bit better. But Joey, ultimately, I will say, the field that we've got here very much feels reminiscent to a real-world IMSA WeatherTech sports car race, with the balance that we have between the GTPs and the GTDs.
It's very closely matched, and kind of to your point about that Ferrari, I remember being at Daytona Test when they rolled that thing out, and yeah, it was pretty amazing just being able to take off that entire rear clip with a couple Zeus clips, call it. You know, it just pins right into the rear subframe, into that rear frame, and off it goes. But this is the battle for what is, call it 5th, 6th on the racetrack. This is the 177, looking back at the 114. So riding on board this Ford Mustang GT3, and that's the Porsche of the Team PGZ 114, directly behind, driven by Sam Ward. I gotta say, you had mentioned the BOP a little bit earlier, Arjuna, especially from the Petit Le Mans iRacing event, where the Ford Mustangs were just so dominant. Curious not to see them maybe a little bit further forward. You had mentioned maybe something about that fuel.
Yeah, they had a crazy fuel ability to just save and be fast, and so I think maybe that's where, again, we had the BOP powered by TFR Lab, just to slightly adjust it for these drivers and their ability more than anything. Adds a bit of weight, maybe removes that ability to save as much fuel, but also slows the car down through the corners. Slightly different ways to, of course, balance these cars. One of the newest cars available on iRacing, of course, as well. Want to learn more about the series, the cars, the drivers? Log on to iRacing.com/IMSA-esports today. We've got 3 more races to come. We've got Indianapolis up next, then off to Sebring and Daytona to close the season off. Basically, Peter, we're checking off all the highlights of the year.
And that is a hard choice to make when you look at the calendar of where the IMSA WeatherTech Championship goes in across the year. I mean, next year we'll have to come back and we'll have to throw Road America in there as well, which is one of my favourites. It's a great racetrack. Mid Ohio, super cool in the back part of the circuit. Lots of undulations. It's like driving a good Scottish B road. I would say Mid Ohio in places. Maybe not quite got the same amount of room to let the car run out wide, but anyway. But it's yeah, there's so many tracks in the IMSA WeatherTech Championship that you could choose. But I like the 4 that we've got. I mean, in Road Atlanta, Sebring and Daytona are part of the 3. I like to call them the majors. I'm a golf fan, so
nice.
You look at the majors, you look at like the Watkins Glen 6 hour, Petit Le Mans, Sebring 12 and Daytona, and the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Those are the majors, to use a golf analogy.
And we'll add the battle on the bricks over time, I think, to those majors. In my opinion, I just think that race is so special. Pit stops, by the way, for GTDs. Did note Sven Haase. We saw him pushing hard and trying to close the gap to Gianni Vecchio from second. He's brought the 102 in just before the top of the hour. And Joey, this is what Peter was alluding to slightly earlier when I had thought that the Apex Racing Team machine had come in for a pit stop rather than a penalty. Going an hour at this track in a GT Daytona car is sometimes a tough order. And so it's going to be interesting to see if someone does decide 43 minutes from now to come into pit lane, 60 minutes to go, and push to the end.
As we ride on board the 89, to your point, I think that Vecchio has a really good kind of platform to work with, though, is that if you are a little bit short on fuel, guess what? You have a 5-second gap back to P2 in class there. So you are clearly in control of the entire GTD field. Manage it as you see fit. If you need to bleed some of that gap in order to make your fuel number, you just need to adjust that driving style a little bit. But strategy is key, and probably of utmost importance. Just make sure that you're listening to your team manager, your spotter on the wall, because they have more information than what you have in the cockpit.
Or takers for GTDs. This time it's the Sontec BMW, the 113, Matti Sieppela behind the wheel. It just scrolled on the bottom of your screen. Diogo Pinto, now crowned as the IndyCar Butt Kicker iRacing Pro Series champion. But I think one thing we saw straight away in qualifying, Team Redline, I think, Peter, there's not many teams that are going to be able to argue that Team Redline are one of the best, if not the best, in the world of sim racing. They've just won a championship in the IndyCar, a car with they had very little experience in coming into the summer. And now, pole position in the GTP, locked out the front row in the GTDs. Yes, I know, didn't go all to plan for the prototype entry, but they've started off this season with a bit of a statement showing us exactly why they are the best and that they've come to play.
They have, yeah, and they've got such a strong driver roster, and they've got some real loyalty in there as well. You look at Enzo Benito, he's been with the team for over 10 years. That's really unusual in sim racing, to see that level of longevity in a team. So we see into the pit then comes the 170 of George Thompson and Luke Bennett, and also the 171, Enzo Benito and Florian Lebigre. So yeah, it is a big statement, I agree with you. This is pretty ominous for the rest of the GTD field, just how impressive Redline have been out the box. I mean, like you say, you expect them to be good, but they've really put a big first tackle in.
Ferrari's looking strong, but the Lamborghini, the Porsche, Drago Racing, AO Racing by Kawanda there, within a second or so, coming into the pit lane, which is exactly what they would want to see. Keep yourself in contention all the way to the very end of this race. They'll have to watch that blend as well back out onto track. Remember, cars exiting the pit lane are spat directly into the path of those running out of turn number 1, which this is a track with consequences, right? Yes, we're seeing a lot of the drivers run off into the grass, but I still think back to Petit Le Mans last year, right? And what was a battle for the championship. GTP's wheel to wheel. Unfortunately for one of them, the number 10 Wayne Taylor racing car doesn't go so well. They're buried in the tire wall. But it's just a reminder that, Joey, at a track like this, you put one wheel off the track, you might be done for the day.
Absolutely, and let's further expand on it. What if it's a new driver that just hopped in the car from that pit stop and they exit out of pit lane and they simply forget to check that left mirror? They simply forget to check that relative box because they aren't in the rhythm yet. I think that pit lane exit is often overlooked here. We always think about turn 3, but once we get into the rhythm of the race, you always have to be careful about what cars are exiting pit lane. The prototypes have a little bit of that speed advantage, right? That acceleration phase to kind of get up to speed up the hill, but the GTD cars can often kind of get kicked off of the racetrack pretty quickly.
Does look as though as the pit stop cycle continues to roll through, given some of the incidents that we have seen so far, namely to the Apex Racing team, we're going to get some new winners here at Road Atlanta for the first time, because back in 2022, the Apex Racing team won in the GT Daytona class. It was SimRC that came out on top in the touring car category. We had the touring cars in our initial IMSA Esports Global Championship campaign. Last year, Urano Esports won at Road Atlanta along with the Apex Racing team once again. Of course, Apex have struggled so far. Urano, IMSA Esports was their swan song as a team, no longer around. So we've got some different things in the mix, especially up towards the front of the field. 1 hour complete though here at the start of the IMSA Esports Global Championship. Pit stop cycles rolling through for the GT Daytonas, getting ready to see the prototypes once again. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta with the AMD 240.
At Michelin, we don't just race for medals. We race to test, to learn, to find answers, to discover innovative ways. We race to take on challenges, to overcome technology limits, to improve the way we all move, to make possible what is not. No, at Michelin, we do not race just for glory. We race for change.
Today's coverage of the AMD 240 is brought to you by Traction, the official media partner of the IMSA Esports Global Championship. Visit traction.gg today. And by AMD, the high-performance and adaptive computing leader, powering the products and services that help solve the world's most important challenges. Their technologies advance the future of the data center, embedded, gaming, and PC markets. And by Michelin, the official tire of the IMSA and of IMSA. Michelin is the exclusive tire provider of all classes for the WeatherTech Championship, Michelin Pilot Challenge, and VP Racing Sports Car Challenge Series. Our junior Kanky party alongside Joey Atterbury and Peter Mackay here from the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. We've had a ball to kick off the first hour of competition, and as it sits right now, some breakaway leaders at the front trying to make some strategy work. Fascinating race so far, all led by a clean start initially for chaos after that. Peter, I'll start with you. Some opening thoughts about how this season started.
Well, coming back to what we said about Team Redline, the way they're looking in GTD right now, having not one but two cars running really strong right now in that Ferrari 296 GT3. They've got the depth in their roster and they've clearly got a car that's set up well, but traffic management has, I have to say, been managed pretty well. There's been one or two little side-to-side incidents, but less than I actually expected there to be. So top marks to the drivers making their way through what is a really, really tricky racetrack to get through the traffic on. Endurance, not a sprint. Well, these drivers have got such a high concentration level that they're able to sprint at maximum attack and do it for a sustained period of time. It's quite impressive to watch, and get yourself on the iRacing.com simulator. Go and try a race of even 24 minutes, let alone 2 hours 40 minutes, and just see what that level of concentration is like, particularly in a multi-class scenario. And that's the great thing about the iRacing platform. You can go on, set the race up exactly how we have here for the IMSA Esports Global Championship, and just get a feel of just how impressive these drivers actually are.
And I'm seeing some people in our chats seeing the level of consistency, the level of precision, lap after lap to hit the same target mark every single time. It's been a rather remarkable level that we're seeing, and well, a good start compared to last year, to say the very least. Both our GTP and GT Daytona classes down under the Fox Factory Bridge and to turn one safely. Yes, the Chevrolet for 56 Racing Team slightly wide through turn 3, but it was just as the traffic started to overlap. Dory Sports around, tagging the Impulse car, and then as the prototypes came on through, all hell broke loose. Our pole sitters, BMW M Team Redline, tangled up. Our championship winners from 2023 tangled up as well, and it's opened up the game. Channel 199 Sim Racing pushing hard behind the BMW M Team BS competition. We pushed a little bit too hard. Drago's Lamborghini escorted off the track. And it has been a race where race control has made their presence known. The Apex Racing Team pushed wide slightly by Maniti's McLaren, one of about 10 penalties that we've had in the first hour. It's been, though, a story of staying on the track, being up front when it counts. And so Joey, Williams Esports Chill Blast, 7 seconds clear in the GTPs. GTD split by 5 seconds as Team Redline lead 1 and 2. Dominant leaders establishing themselves right now.
Agreed. I think that Williams Esports Chill Blast has been in control this entire time, as this is P19 in that GTD class that we're watching on screen. I think the only time that number 5 car really had any real threat was just working their way through traffic when that 89 and that 95 definitely caught them, but then once they got through that pit stop cycle and once they got back out onto the racetrack and in their rhythm, they've been able to extend that gap again.
A dive up the inside from G2. They fought back from a stop and hold penalty at the very start of the race, and it's been an impressive drive. Yoni Katia has got himself up to now 19th position. Rob Clark in the Solpec Precision Porsche couldn't do too much at this stage of the race, and then that Stealth Black Visceral Esports 144 pokes its nose to the inside, decides better of it, and backs out. Have talked about the fact that we have drive time restrictions, so we're starting to reach that point where teams are going to be thinking about getting their drivers swapped around. And Peter Mackay, you had mentioned it slightly earlier, at this level of motorsport, yes, everyone's going to be quick, but on any given day, or as Jake Sperry sometimes says, any given Sunday, one driver is going to be slightly quicker than another.
And that's down to the teams to know exactly who has got that edge and how to use it. So that's one thing that's so important in a multi-driver championship like this one. The 144 Mercedes and GTD Visceral Esports has served its penalty, a drive-through penalty for contact with the 103. That's the grid and go car, the Ferrari of Dino Lombardi and Cody Death. So actually, there's been a lot more contact between the GTD cars themselves collectively, rather than prototype to GTD contact. So that's something that's maybe a little bit of a surprise, where it's been interclass issues rather than the combination of the two.
And this is a real drag-out battle between Sean Campbell and Agustin Canapino. Remember, the Cadillac of Race Clutch went long in that first stint of the race, and it really enabled him to maybe strategize differently later on. The Porsche, though, on the inside up towards turn 3, not alongside enough, and a battle that started at turn 10 finishes at turn 3. And oh yeah, don't forget, CrowdStrike Racing, Scott Michaels joined the fun as well. This is why we love these prototypes. And to what Peter was saying, Joey, it's great to see the prototypes interfering with the GT cars maybe a little bit less, because as I sometimes like to say during iRacing special events, GTP stands for going to pass, LMP stands for let me pass, and GTD, going to die.
You know, I haven't heard that before, but yeah, that kind of lines up with exactly how multi-class sim racing can be, but I don't think it's nearly that type of warfare that we've seen here today. I always like to kind of think of them as everybody going to the playground for recess, right? You got the high school kids, but you also got the middle school kids out there, and there's always going to be the bullies on the playground. It's just who gets basically fights back to them, who's going to bully people around it, and for the most part, it seems like everybody is playing nice today. It's always good to see.
Sometimes they play nice. We'll see what happens at Indy. I'm just a bit scared of that chicane. You know, I really didn't like the double hairpins that F1 initially had, but that's a fast chicane, especially with the speed differentials that we're going to have. And whoa, that is a very wrecked CrowdStrike Racing entry. How has Marcus Hamilton done that to the Acura?
Oh dear, that's, yeah, the whole front section of the car completely ripped off. That will take a while to repair, so that's such a pity for the CrowdStrike team, because they had two entries running really strong. Their number 4 car is still running up there in 7th place, so they'll now be carrying the honour of CrowdStrike there, with Acura also the leading Acuras in the in this event. So yeah, not good at all there. A little bit of damage, I say a lot of damage for that CrowdStrike Acura.
Yeah, that's a little bit of damage, Peter. I want to see what your description of a lot of damage is, because I want to get on your page, because that would make me feel better about how I typically drive. 3 wide? No. The second of the sole surviving, I should say, CrowdStrike entry, Scott Michaels decides not to force it up the middle with Agustin Canapino, who's lost a bit of ground to Sean Campbell, who's now starting to focus a bit more forward. And Agustin Canapino, a lot of people will of course know him for his exploits in touring cars in his native Argentina. Of course, they may know him for racing in the NTT IndyCar series over the last handful of years as well. But one thing they may not realize is how involved Agustin has been in the world of esports for now years. He's been a part of the Williams esports program for 5-6 years since their inception. No longer racing with them actively, now with Solpec Precision Racing. He did win the iRacing 24 Hours of Daytona earlier this year though. Joey, what happened here? It's down at the chicane.
It was a bit of a 2-car GTD incident. You see the BMW and the Porsche getting together. I believe that's the Team PGZ Porsche. And then look at this. Prototypes split through. I'm sorry. Well, that's where the impact was just before that. 2 prototypes split on either side. But then the 3rd prototype coming in, we saw the damage.
Just a little bit of damage as well. And you've got to say as well, car held its brakes. It's just you're down the hill, there's a bit of a compression. Your eyes aren't necessarily focused to where that car would have been spun, right? So it's a difficult situation to avoid. And I mean, Peter, take a look on board.
I'm not a driver, or at least I'm trying to maybe pretend to be. Yeah, we're going to relate to our team racing driver Joey Atterbury on that one, I think, but it did seem to me that he had time to react.
I'll pitch in. I do think that was a bit of target fixation. It seemed like he wanted to go to the left, but then he thought about going to the right at the last second and ultimately just barreled straight into what he wanted to avoid, aka looking at it.
Looking at it. And Peter, don't sell yourself short. Don't you forget that one of my first commentaries was on a certain Peter Mackay racing in the performance playoffs. So you remember the grid that you were up against? There were some IMSA drivers in there as well.
There was, yes, in the Acura HPD, ARX01B, I think. No, C, ARX01B. Yes. The second greatest prototype ever built.
I'm not going to dispute you there. A penalty for the surviving now CrowdStrike entry, by the way. So one of them in pit lane because of an incident, no fault of their own. Race control deems another incident, partially the fault at least, of that number 4. And so it is going to be Scott Michaels that will serve the penalty. Drivers have to serve the penalties within 3 laps of them being issued. So one thing that sometimes we talk about is drivers serving penalties that they haven't accrued. And that's something that I'm watching the track limit discussion, Joey. There are some teams starting to flirt close to the limit that they were told about pre-race. And some of these teams haven't done their driver change just yet. So one driver has racked up a whole bunch of off-tracks and now leaves their teammate with the task of managing, rationing incident points to the end of the race.
It is what it is, right? If you are that second driver, hopefully you've got a good grip on your teammate and their personality to kind of say, all right, hey, can you keep it below 5 incident points? Can you keep it below 10 incident points? And just kind of rein them in a little bit. Some of the drivers, of course, are going to be a little bit easier to listen to than others, but it is what it is. They're going to have to go out there and deal with it.
Hashtag deal with it. That should be what I think the motto of racing should be, right? Because this is something that I've realized a bit more now that I've had the chance to go and do some more real world stuff, right? Is that we have this idea that sim racing is great and motorsport is going to be just as perfect as sim racing often is. That ain't the case, unfortunately. The real world has got all sorts of different variables, and the sim world helps to really streamline so much of that, and it's sometimes we take a lot for granted when we step out into the real world. Left side of the screen, again, look at those manufacturers. 2 BMWs currently lead at the front of the GTPs. It's 3 Ferraris at the front of the GTDs as it sits right now, but we've still got just under 90 minutes to go, a sequence of pit stops to work our way through, and the gap between first and fifth in that GTD class is still just under 10 seconds. And so Rexy, AO Racing by Porsche, could still think they've got a chance here, Peter.
Well, let's see what they can do and see if we can see Rexy spraying the champagne. Although it's quite difficult with one of those big champagne bottles when you've got such tiny arms. That's one thing that Rexy does struggle with. But joking aside, they've done such a cool job to engage with fans of all ages with AO Racing. And one person who maybe doesn't get quite the credit she deserves, Kelly Bruley, who's in charge of the PR for the AO Racing team, does an amazing job of engaging, like I say, all fans of all genders, all ages, and made the IMSA paddock an even more open place than it already is. If you haven't been to a race, you're missing out. Get into a race, particularly Rolex 24 at Daytona. Comes highly recommended.
I haven't been to Petit Le Mans, heard it's great as well, as we see the 56 Racing team slide up the inside. That's Guillaume Levesque, the Canadian, passing Alessandro Bico in the Mercedes AMG Williams Esports car. It's also great as well seeing it's not just Rexy, we've got Roxy, there's Spike, there's all sorts of characters now to the AO Racing multiverse that they're starting to build. So great to see their partnership with a big team in sim racing as well. They haven't just partnered up and said, you know what, let's enter Rexy and see how it goes. No, they partnered up with the team that Lauren Heinrich competed last year in the IMSA Esports Global Championship. Of course, Lauren raced in Rexy this year in the real world, won the GTD Pro Drivers Championship, and rumor has it we may see Lauren back in the 118 AO Racing by Kawanda Rexy entry before the end of the season. There is the dinosaurs, and again, just missing a couple of gold teeth at the front. They've got to win a couple of races in the virtual world first though, Joey.
Yeah, it's nice they'll be able to add them if they can win those virtual races. And, props to AO Racing for doing what they're doing on the marketing front, especially with the dynos and the characters and everything. We often become fans of a driver or a team, but I think what AO Racing has done and essentially create characters in the paddock, especially that's so family friendly and invites kids that want to come to the racetrack. They want to become fans of this racing driver or this racing team. Bravo to them. It's a great thing to see, and it's a great thing for sports car racing.
I'm just marveling at the livery right now, speechless. It was one of those things that it came down to the wire as to whether it'd be in time for round one, but it's so cool to see it. We've got BS Turner as well, that split liveried machine that raced in the real world at Sebring. not racing anymore in this race because involved in the incidents in the opening lap. But again, sim and reality getting closer and closer together. And I think there's hopefully some more exciting stuff to come as we build through the season, through January as well, to build up to another exciting Rolex 24. And you know, Peter, you mentioned just how special that race is. I got to go to the 24 for the very first time this year, and the one thing that amazed me, how many people were on the grid just before the 24. Pictures don't do it justice. Sports car racing and prototype racing is back.
It is, and that's something that the IMSA WeatherTech Championship does so well, is that access to the stars. And the drivers and the teams are well geared for it too. All the drivers are around their cars, they're there, they totally understand that it's, everyone wants to have, wants to see them, wants to say hello, wish them luck for the race. It's a really special place to be because you can tell your favourite driver, good luck for the race, hope you do well, and they say, oh, thank you. It's something that engagement, if you look at other categories of international motorsport, that access is just simply not possible, or you have to pay a huge amount of money to gain that access, and it's for the very few. IMSA's not like that at all. I mean, I had someone contact me the other day asking, how to get access to go and take photographs. Can I get a credential? To be honest, you almost don't need one because the access for everyone is almost the same as what we get in the media. So that's something that makes IMSA what it is, not only from a fan standpoint, but also what the drivers bring to the table as well. And from speaking to so many drivers over the years, they love going to race in America.
I think one of the really cool parts about that real-world IMSA paddock that you were kind of mentioning there, Peter, is just the accessibility. I've had the very fortunate opportunity to not only be a part of a lot of IMSA teams, but manage a couple IMSA teams, especially in the GT4 categories. And IMSA themselves do a great job to say, hey, if you got fans that are checking out the trailer and checking out the car, invite them under the tent. That's why they're there. So to your point, yeah, the accessibility is always great. And kind of to Arjuna's point, Daytona is always wild. That pre-grid, it's almost like a mosh pit trying to get in and out of that down there. If you haven't been to Daytona, yeah, put the 24 on the calendar.
Yeah, and I managed to bring a friend that I met on Reddit, started a sim racing team with him back in 2017. He flew with me to the 24. He helps behind the scenes as well to help us run some of the IMSA Esports stuff as well. So very cool to be out there. And I think like Peter said, you don't necessarily need all the access, because I had the access thanks to the wonderful people at IMSA that put all of this esports stuff together as well. But we spent most of our time hanging out with our friends who didn't have all the access, because IMSA is that open and accessible. So go wander around the paddock, go and do the grid walk, go and enjoy sports car racing. But there's so much happening in the world of iRacing right now. Of course, this championship kicking off. We've just wrapped up the IndyCar Butt Kicker iRacing Pro Series as well. And let's not forget that tomorrow night, the World of Outlaws iRacing Late Model Series continues as well. So constant, ever-present esports action to come. And don't forget that qualifying races are every week. So the drivers that are racing tomorrow in the main event, 8 p.m. Eastern, here on the iRacing Esports Network, well, they qualified November 19th through 21st, and they've got to do that every single week. It's a lot of effort for some of these drivers, but they put that all in, and it's all as well as the World of Outlaws Dirt Racing 24 console game is now available on all platforms: Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and as well PS4 and PS5. So learn more at worldofoutlaws.game.com. Really great to see, especially this year, where iRacing continues to branch out. Down to pit lane, I think Casey Kerwin has run his race. An hour and 20 or so minutes, the Channel 199 sim racing car enters pit lane, and Joey Owen Carroll steps in.
Yeah, gonna do a driver swap there in that number 95. I expect all of these teams to be doing the driver swap here on this second round of pit stops. And a little peculiar, this is about 15, almost 16 laps shy of where that 199 actually went in their first fuel stint. So let's keep an eye here on the number 5. This is our overall leader. They're gonna opt to stay out on the racetrack. I think potentially if you top the car off, you could go about another 14 or 15 laps from here.
And which teams, remember, did fill up long versus which teams slightly short filled will determine probably when they decide to slide their way down onto the box and execute that driver change. It is going to be around a 50 seconds stationary time for all teams. Expected to be a bit of a full service VP Racing fuel alongside the Michelin tires as well. But as we sit right now, things starting to break apart in the GTDs. Joey, talk us through the story of the race.
Yeah, it's really been this number 170 Team Redline car. Remember, they started up front and they have been in control of the race the entire time, setting one of the fastest laps already at a 1:18.0. But really, the consistency is what is paying off for this 170 because it's given a 5.5 second lead over this next car, their teammate, the number 171, also from Team Redline. Now, I do have to say that the top three are Ferrari, so the overall pace pretty similar. It's just which driver can really keep those consistent lap times. We do have a team difference on P3 to the number 102, as looks like we've got our overall leader here coming down pit lane. So on lap number 31 of the stint here for the number 5 car, and this is the 102. This is that third Ferrari in the GTD class, so they are currently giving chase. They're about call it about 3.5 seconds behind that second Team Redline car. And then in the 4th place in GTD, we finally have a manufacturer swap with the Drago Racing number 168. This is going to be that Lamborghini Huracan. You see it streaking down towards turn number 10 right here. Things have been going pretty straightforward for this 168. Maybe not the consistency that the overall Ferraris have right now, maybe about a 1/10.5 off in terms of that overall pace. And then in 5th place, we've got another manufacturer, the Porsche, the Rexy Porsche from AO Racing by Coanda. This is that 118 car that we were just highlighting, Arjuna. They're doing a terrific job, albeit the Porsche about 9 seconds off of that Lamborghini they're chasing.
Yeah, and they're not far in front of Sam Ward, Team PGZ Sam Ward, who is on the hunt as well. So still waiting then for BMW M Team BS Plus competition to roll their way to pit lane. They did fill up a little bit longer than the team that we just saw, Williams Esports Chill Blast, roll their way to the lane, so maybe at least 2-3 laps or so before they will find their way down to the box and that driver change executed. It's Matt Farrow that's jumped into that Williams Esports Chill Blast car. Going to be very curious to see how they get on, because Williams Esports last year, also in the BMW, I think it's fair to say, a bit of an up and down roller coaster of a season. Peter, I'm not sure if you remember, pole position at Daytona. Let's not talk about how that race ended.
No, definitely not. Best to leave that one behind. But that's the thing, a great thing about the first day of a new season. Everything's in front of you, so you can go and enjoy it. Drive-through penalty being served for the 199 racing team in GTD. Unfortunately, been quite a few penalties to contend with. Now, BS competition, as you alluded to, Arjuna, they stopped for 4.5 seconds more at the first stop than the number 5 Williams Esports Chill Blast car did. So that's why they're able to run a little bit deeper into this stint, and they may be able to close the gap down. The gap was sitting at sort of 6 or 7 seconds when the number 5 Williams car went into the pits. So we could well see that gap actually reducing slightly, and we'll have another really close battle in for the lead once again.
Fingers crossed. Meanwhile, crossover with Vesta Sports Chevrolet watching on channel 199, not able to make this work just yet, but Owen Carroll is starting to push the tempo a little bit with fresh tires underneath him, of course. Still waiting for his rival to make his way down to pit lane. Might be this lap, might be as many as a couple more laps as well. All just depend on what Felix Van Delft, the engineer for BS competition, is going to call in the ear of the 89. Today it's Danny Lorenzo and Nicholas Boy in the BMW. Over the rest of the season, expect to see Phil Denez jump into that prototype. To what Peter was mentioning earlier, a driver with so much experience in GT cars, who's been racing GT3s this year out in Italy in the real world, but racing in a prototype, something the GTP class has really brought to the forefront. BS competition out there for one additional lap, and now look at the margin, Joey. They pulled over channel 199 through all the traffic.
And I'm looking just at the hard data that on the notes that I've taken. So this number 89 car on their first stint went 42 laps on fuel. They're currently working lap number 34, as it looks like we've got another car down pit road here. I believe that this is going to be the number 8 car in second place. This is Mitchell de Jong in that IMSA Esports number 8 car. So this is our second place runner on track right now. They're also going to do a driver swap. But back to my long-winded point over here. I think the number 89 can potentially push this thing a lot further. It's just, what does the strategy dictate?
They didn't fill fully last time, so I think that's where I'm suspecting a slightly short stop, but that pit entry's off to the right. They do indeed hook it down to pit lane this time by, and so I think Danny Lorenzo has run his race. Bit of a wiggle on entry. If you ever needed a visual description, Peter, that this is a tough place to enter pit lane, there you go.
Well, what astounded me in the iRacing Petit Le Mans 6 weeks ago was just how many of the world's top sim racers crashed into the pit wall there. I've never seen anything quite like it in the time of commentating on virtual motorsport. So yes, for some reason it is very, very tricky, but and this is the thing, you're trying to not lose any tenth of a second at all. You've really got to maximise everything, and coming into the pit lane, it is probably the most difficult corner on the racetrack, or close to the racetrack.
It means that Sean Campbell once again inherits the lead, going long in the Cadillac, as Peter joked last time. What you need to say, fueled by a large 5.5 litre naturally aspirated engine, and it will save you all the gas that you would want. Solpec Precision Racing still with them though as well, so a Canapino in the Porsche 963 has done a decent job of managing the VP Racing fuel underneath him, as we see a couple more drivers down to pit lane. But stepping out of the car and handing over to his teammate Matt Farrow, we've got Jaden Munoz standing by with Joey Atterbury down on pit lane.
Yeah, Jaden, you're out of that prototype machine now. You pretty much managed the race from the front the whole time. How did it feel from inside the cockpit?
Yeah, it was very interesting to start. I already knew, like, from the seat, like, the first stint was going to be very, very, like, chaotic, and it certainly was. I didn't expect, like, all that pile-up to happen. But yeah, luckily we avoided everything. But yeah, it was sketchy. The first stint was all right for me. Felt like I could have pushed a little bit more, but I don't know. I think it's something with the wind in this, because the winds are like really, really high in this race, so it's hard to get a little bit more trust into the car. But yeah, I think I did okay in the first stint. Second stint was not very good. We got hindered a bit with some lap traffic, and then some of the team, diving us in some corners, but it's whatever. And then the last pit stop we had a glitch, so it's not looking good after that one.
You know, you always are thrown a few speed bumps along the way in the race, but I gotta ask you, in terms of traffic management, it's always difficult with the GT cars. Did you have any worrisome moments out there, or is everybody, for the most part, still playing nice?
I think, especially in the first one, everyone was kind of being a little bit more cautious, especially me. I took a lot of caution diving, especially into like turn 4, turn 5. Yeah, those are the scary ones. I think I took a little bit more risk in the second stint. But yeah, traffic is really tough around here, as it always is. And yeah.
Well, I would say looking forward to the last hour, 10 minutes here. Are you guys worried about any more of pit stop issues or any fuel issues that might be arising?
As long as we don't have the glitch again, I think we will be okay for now. But yeah, that last one did hinder us a bit, so we'll have a little bit more to come back on.
Well, Jaden, I'll let you go. Thank you so much for coming out and racing with us, and great job managing those first couple stints.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Looks like we also have Mitchell in here with us. Happy to have you in here. Just hopped out of that prototype machine. How was it for you?
You know, we have such a big speed difference versus the GT cars that, yeah, it's easy for it to go wrong. So, yeah, just trying to manage the off tracks, you know, put Elvis in a good spot where he can really show some pace at the end as the track kind of dies down with the traffic. So, Yeah, we'll see. We had a minor mishap with the fueling here, so the strategy's a little bit different now, but yeah, we'll see what happens. I think there's still a long way to go.
We've already talked a little bit about the GT cars and the traffic. I got to ask you about the manufacturers. How do you like the Porsche around Road Atlanta here? Do you feel like there's any strengths or weaknesses compared to the other prototypes that you've been racing against?
You know, I'm definitely a little bit biased, as some of you know, so, but yeah, to be honest, as we've seen in like qualifying, also in all the race laps here, it's all quite balanced, I would say. I think they've done a really good job with BOP for this one, so I mean, you never know, but it's really hard to tell at the end of the day with all the traffic. You can't really show your true potential in the race, but I think it's, yeah, pretty positive that you see so many different cars running basically the same times everywhere, so I don't really see any big fuel differences either, so yeah, I would say the series did a great job with that, and you know, yeah, all good.
I got to ask you just one more quick question here, Mitchell, while I've got you. Usually drivers, they give a piece of information to their teammate. Did you talk to Elvis at all or tell him anything before he hopped in?
Yeah, we've been communicating quite a bit throughout, but yeah, I mean, we just talked a little bit about the weather, what the wind's doing, as that's pretty big here. The wind has been pretty strong in this session. So just kind of giving him a heads up on that, in-car settings that we can adjust, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, we're just managing fuel a little bit and trying to get through the traffic as best we can, so.
Well, good luck out there in that remaining hour, 6 minutes.
Thank you.
Looks like we've got one more interview that's going to be joining us here, and it is Casey Kerwin, who is driving that number 95, the Channel 199 sim racing car. How was it out there for you?
Yeah, pretty hectic, but all went well. Yeah, I love traffic, so I had a lot of fun. The traffic is what keeps me going in the IMSA stuff, so there was a lot of it. I enjoyed it, and we definitely were a bit on the lucky side with everything that happened early on and kind of the traffic through the whole run. So yeah, we're in a good spot, and hopefully keep it there.
So you mentioned traffic. Did you guys as a team have a game plan on the aggression level going through traffic, or do you just manage it lap by lap, situation by situation?
Yeah, I mean, it just changes every time you go through traffic, because also, especially the first run, like the GT3s are so together, and then you'll kind of get them separated, and then all of a sudden, like, you know, 20 minutes down the road, they're all packed together again and all that. But for the most part, I felt like I was pretty cautious. I mean, it's very, very tricky with all the traffic for everyone, so just surviving, I think you'll have a good day. But you just kind of manage it situation. Also, you know, some of the, maybe towards the tail of GT3s, you can maybe send in some places where the fast guys you can't, because they're just a little bit quicker through there. So just kind of managing that, you know, who you're around and all that sort of stuff.
Now, a lot of people know you for how successful you've been over in the eNASCAR series, winning that championship, but you're also part of this team over here. Now, how much was winning Daytona last year, like, kind of momentum, set you up to work together here again in 2024? Did that really kind of help push the ball down the hill?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, last year for me, like, when I fell in love with IMSA, started doing it more last year for me, getting to the opportunity to compete was, I just wanted to kind of prove to myself that I could compete for the most part. I still struggled at times. And obviously Daytona was going to be my best track, just for what I had the most experience at. So yeah, I just kind of proved to myself that, you know, I can compete. You know, obviously there's still things I need to work on, like even here, like to the top guys, I'm not quite fully at their pace yet, but yeah, I just feel like I've learned more over the whole year as well, like continuing to keep racing and being in some bigger SOFs and things like that have helped me, and yeah, I just feel like I'm a bit more complete for this stuff this year. And yeah, obviously Owen and I had a lot of momentum from Daytona last year, and yeah, it looks, so far we've kind of rolled it into today, so it's been good.
Well, I know you are a busy guy out there. Thank you so much for coming and racing with us, and good luck the rest of the race out there.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, that was one of the drivers of that Channel 199 sim racing team. They're currently sitting in P5 overall in prototype.
And the thing about Casey as well is so humble. He calls himself a streamer that sometimes goes esports racing as well, which I think slightly undersells his capability across so many different disciplines as well. We're focused on Rexy defending from Sam Ward. These are two teams that are probably thinking about their pit stop windows opening up, because Peter, as we've talked about, GTDs can maybe go as long as 60-61 minutes on fuel. You might want to get your second driver in to push to the very end.
And that is, yeah, pure driving, pure sprint stint for the driver waiting in the wings, ready for that hour long. I think if you can get underneath that hour, and if you can take that worry about fuel away, and it's just flat full rich to the end, that's where you want to get. If you pit now, you're going to have to really heavy fuel save, so you're going to need at least 2 more laps, including this one. So there's definitely that thought in there, and I would think for the PGZ car behind Rexy there, it's, do you really want to be taking massive risks to try and overtake now? No, I think this is where you just get that tiny last bit of fuel saving in there to try and make the jump at the stop.
It's been a pretty tidy race for these two as well, maximizing the Porsche to the best of their abilities for the most part as well. Sam Ward, saw some people in the iRacing Esports Network chat wondering where he was. There he is, driver from Sweden on the charge right now, but not long before likely Ward will hand over the 114 and to his teammate Lewis Woods. And of course, one great thing is that you're all watching us on one of the official channels live on IMSA TV on the iRacing Esports Network. Some of these teams have got their own streams as well, so there's 600 or so people watching KC, 600 people watching Pablo, 1,000 or so watching Redline. Great to see the engagement for the series, as finally we are going to see Sean Campbell down to pit lane. Joey, I'd been keeping an eye on this. 43 laps on the stint. They can't quite get to the end from here, but that last stint is going to be really short on pit lane.
And I'm curious, you know, I would have to say fill it all the way up right now, do your driver swap, and then just kind of sprint it all the way, splash and dash at the end. But it seems like that strategy was starting with the full tank, filling it up again for a full tank, and to your point, it doesn't really necessarily add up to the perfect race-winning strategy. But hey, you know, you'll never know until you try. Maybe they can pull off some miraculous fuel savings here and somehow make it to the end.
Race clutch is 23, by the way. Sean Campbell out. Jay Dennehan jumps in. Driver with plenty of prototype experience, but not so much on iRacing, so going to be interesting to see how he's going to really dive into this. His first major esports championship on the platform. He's got a great teammate and a great team behind him as well to set him up for some sort of success as the traffic just continues to intermingle. We're at that point of the race where it's not much clean air to really enjoy. The traffic's relentless. The traffic is never ending as well. And so understanding exactly how and when you need to push in the traffic, always important. Always interesting seeing the different setups, the different rigs, Peter, that drivers are using. Max Muir, one of the few drivers across of the just shy of 100 drivers in the field, racing in virtual reality.
It's quite an experience when you put on that virtual reality headset, and yeah, the whole idea of it is that you feel that you're really truly immersed in that experience. Interestingly, a lot of the top drivers, they don't go for virtual reality headset. They go for usually 3-screen setup or a kind of curved round screen setup to try and give that peripheral vision when you're battling away in traffic. A lot of the top drivers say that that's just a little bit quicker and a little bit more reactive. The VR is not quite as quick. I mean, we're talking really minuscule amounts, but if you hop on the iRacing simulator, put that headset on, it'll give you such an immersive experience. It does take a little bit of getting used to it. It does make me feel slightly ill, I must be honest.
Have you ever done VR with motion, Peter?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so if you want to get even more sick, there you go. That's the combination that you need. I always find it interesting that road races, I think, is where we see a bit more of the aversion to virtual reality. But Joey, I'm curious what you think about this as a driver, but especially in a lot of the dirt racing, right? We just talked about the World of Outlaws and the esports series going on there, late models competition, but I've commentated on Rallycross, the Pro 2 championship, Pro 4 championship that we had as well. We see a lot more VR there. Shorter races, a little bit more, I guess, close compact racing, and drivers appreciate the ability to be able to look around.
I think it comes down to the experience that you want. I feel like in a lot of these professional esports competitions, you're going to want something with a really, really high refresh rate, something probably like a triple monitor or a really good ultra-wide. This number 178 is running a triple setup, and the virtual reality, I think it's really, really neat. And coming from a racing car driver perspective, it's almost like putting on a helmet and then you just get transported inside the race car, right? You get to look down at the buttons, you get to look at your gauges, you get to look right at your mirror, look left at the mirror, and really kind of get a feel of the world around you. And yes, to your point, Arjuna, I think that helps out a ton when the car is moving around a lot. Those Pro 2s, those Pro 4s, those dirt races where you have so much yaw angle in the car, it really helps to be able to turn your head. However, with triple monitors, as long as you got the field of view set properly, it can be a very, very similar experience. It just doesn't quite have that immersion level, call it.
Let's get the FOV police out for your triple screen setups, shouldn't we? Just saw Josh Edmondson jumped into the IMSA YouTube chat to say he loves VR. He's one of those drivers that's competed in the iRacing Off-Road Championship Series. He's team manager for Channel 199 Sim Racing as well, so probably quite experienced doing some practice with his drivers in VR, what's that's like and whether he would want to do that in this sort of a competition as well. Up front, it's quite interesting right now as the gap starts to close. Nicholas Boy still leads for BMW BS Plus competition, but Matt Farrow has been slowly starting to narrow that gap down in the Williams Esports Chill Blast entry. 3 seconds between them, another 3 seconds further back, Peter, to Owen Carroll, and then a big gulf to Elvis Rankin. I think that GTP class is looking like it's down to the 3 at the front.
Yeah, and just crunching some of the numbers and looking at who's got what. And interestingly, the number 5 Williams Chill Blast car is a little bit lighter on fuel of what's been put in over the 2 stops so far. So they will need to be putting in a little bit more. Looking at BS competition, they're actually even lighter. So they've kind of, that's interesting. They've gone 2 seconds lighter. So the 2 leading cars, effectively, they are the lightest on fuel of what's gone in the tank so far. So this is going to unravel really interestingly, I think. Channel 199 Sim Racing in the 95 car, they're fairly evenly matched in there as well. Coanda, they are the dark horse, actually. The number 8 Coanda, the number 8 Coanda car with Elvis Rankin and Mitchell de Jong, they've got a bit more fuel that they've put in over the course of the race, so keep a watch out for them.
Yeah, and that's something that actually, go back to last year, Coanda ended up 6th in the first round of the season in one of their entries. The other one was back behind them in 7th, and they went on a very interesting fuel-saving approach in the Porsche 963. They felt that was their best chance for achieving a result. It's not the same sort of fuel-saving strategy, but I think, like Peter points out, they're in that no man's land where they could be, dragged into the fight, or they could be left out and just run by themselves for the remaining time. Our Michelin wildcard entry, Scherer Esports, still hunting down Drago Racing, and it's a really impressive performance from them, Joey. They qualified down in 20th position. They've gained 11 spots so far to sit inside of the top 10. And while we're not going to see any more of Scherer Esports for the remainder of the season, they'll be pretty happy with the performance they've showed in their one-off outing this year.
Not only are they that far forward with that many positions gained, but I'm looking at timing and scoring. They are the furthest forward of all of the McLarens that are out there running. So that kind of sometimes is where you set your benchmark, right? If you know you can't catch the Ferraris just based here at Road Atlanta, at least be the fastest of the McLarens. They're doing a great job, showing a lot of respect out there. I haven't seen them on that penalty list. Otherwise, they wouldn't be inside the top 10 in class. And really, they're right on the back of that 169 car, that Lamborghini directly in front. Maybe an opportunity for another position as well.
And still sniffing maybe even a top 5. Remember, AO Racing by Coanda, the Rexy entry, we talked about it slightly earlier. It's somewhat dropping back from the leaders. Speaking of, race leader up front, Nicholas Boy pilots the BMW M Team BS Plus competition, and his teammate Danny Lorenzo joins us now. Peter Mackay standing by with the driver of the 89.
Danielle, it all seems to be going very well at the moment. What's the story of the race been in the 89 car so far?
Well, honestly, it's been quite unspectacular for me. I mean, at the beginning, I mean, it didn't look like it from the outside probably, but I just hoped for a top 5 in Q, which I got luckily, and then I hoped for just swimming with the leading pack at the beginning. And then, yeah, the early crash at the beginning was just pure luck that I survived it, and the 2 of the 3 cars that were ahead of me did not. And from then on, it was just, yeah, playing the safe game, just saving fuel, saving the tires, see what comes around, if the traffic gives us an advantage or anything. I think it did, because I felt like I was lacking like half a tenth or so to Williams throughout.
Seems as though we've lost Danny Lorenzo there, so apologies for the technical issues, but live broadcasting, things can happen at any time. This does seem as though, Joey, just the sense that I got from him, he wasn't necessarily expecting that sort of a crazy start, and then once it happened, they just rolled with the punches.
It's what you have to do in racing. Sometimes it goes your way, sometimes it doesn't go your way. And I mean, what was one of Peter's keys to the race, right? Make it through turn number 2. Well, everybody made it through turn number 2. It just so happened to be that the major incident was a little bit further down the road, turn number 7 on the first way through traffic. But you gotta roll with the punches when you're racing.
Punches as well. We got takers down onto pit lane, and this is important for the final time today, Peter. Red line are in.
Yeah, red line have just been imperious, but they might be about to get jumped here by the grid and go Ferrari. It's a race off of pit road. There's a Mercedes in there which is running a lap down, 3 wide coming out the pit road, and grid and go back out of it there. Team red line do not, so that is the 171 car rejoining. And just, well, was just a little bit braver there coming out. One of them had to blink, in fact 2 of them had to blink, and it was the 171 of Florian Lebiger with ice in his veins, and he hangs on to that critical advantage.
They're stuck behind some traffic, but like you say, track position could be important here. Unsettled and out of shape for the Apex Racing Mercedes, who pulls out of line. Luke McEwen knows this is not his fight, settles in behind that grid and go Ferrari, and I think now all bets are off, because these drivers don't need a full tank of fuel to get to the end, so these stops aren't necessarily all going to be full service. Here comes Rexy in for the final time today, Joey.
And that just comes down to those strategies on how each of these teams has basically laid out this 2-hour and 40-minute race. We're also getting that lead McLaren coming down pit road as well. These cars were able to stretch it, call it 1 lap further on that stint, but he could have filled it up a little bit shorter, and with 50 minutes to go, Arjuna, to your point, these GT cars should have no issue making it from here to the end.
The 50 minutes doesn't sound like a lot of time, but I promise you there's still a lot for us to figure out and unwind, both strategy and then maybe battles all the way to the end. Remember as well, if teams have not already swapped around their drivers, they have to do it in this sequence of pit stops. Tristan Iglesias is out of Rexy, Michael Johnny in, and a whole bunch of other swaps in the GTD. This is that blend though, and it was neck and neck, and Grid and Go deciding, Peter, they did not want any part of the fight.
Interesting, that Grid and Go car was about half a meter ahead. They actually had a slight nose on the red line car, and I mean, that's a really tricky one there because it's so narrow coming out of pit lane, but that's a really key point coming out of pit lane, and red line hang on, which puts them in a position to score a 1-2 depending on how these pit stops roll out, but that could be really, really pivotal.
It's something Race Control will take a look at as well, as the Lamborghini for Drago Racing, the 169, slots its way into the store. So Nicholas Matteo jumps out, Jaden Laydick gets in, as back onto track is the sole surviving VRS Kawanda machine, I do believe. That was not ideal out of turn 7, all as in front of him. A couple of drivers fighting as well. I think that's fiercely forward in the Apex Racing team in the fight for 7th in the prototype category. So I did mention that there are fights up and down through the field. And that is one thing that there are points to play for in every position as well. This has got the same point structure, Joey, as they do use in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. Points in qualifying, points in the race as well. There's a real incentive to finishing every race.
I like that. I think that it kind of hangs the lure out there to put together a complete weekend. You need to be able to be fast not only in qualifying but also in the race and throughout the entirety of the race. You can't just have a really, really fast car at the beginning half. You have to be able to close it out as well. It looks like, though, P7 is starting to heat up in this GTP fight. This is the number 11 and the number 99, the Apex Racing team giving chase here going into 7.
We saw Paddy Wolf with the bold move earlier. Marcos Nunez now behind the wheel of that 11, fending off the advances of Marcel Hubert for the Apex Racing team. Valkyrie's Ford Mustang up on the jacks. Vesta Sports Chevrolet up on the jacks as well, as might be some driver changes for each of them. Daniel Savini jumps back into the 152 for Vesta Sport. But in this fight now for 7th position, up the inside of the G2 Ford Mustang, enables Nunez to hold on for the time being. Now, these are two drivers that have been out on track for about 16, 17 laps or so right now. And it's a battle between two manufacturers, Peter. Cadillac versus Acura.
Yeah, the biggest engine car in the field versus the smallest in GTP, the 5.5 V8 of the Cadillac versus the 2.4 high revving V6 of the Acura. One, of course, the Cadillac based on a Dallara chassis, the Acura based on an Orica chassis, just as the rules go. Multimatic chassis for the Porsche, for example. So very, very closely matched on the timesheets to ride with number 5, Matt Farrow, just a second behind the 89, the race leader of Nicolas Beau. And it is very, very tight indeed right now.
It's just been traffic taking. That's all it is. The traffic gives in spades to Williams Esports. It's taking from BMW M Team BS Plus competition. Some traffic between them, yes, but expect the Acura of CrowdStrike Racing to be a moot point in this battle. Instead, it's down to under a second. And Joey, maybe most importantly, Channel 199 have not been able to close in as well. They are still 6 seconds off of the race leader. It has been the charge from Williams Esports to bring them into the fight.
It really has been just this number 5 hunting it down, and that pace has been pretty incredible, just turning very, very consistent lap times, and now they're using the traffic to their benefit as well. You see that 89 car just right up the road within touching distance, and I believe that's actually a lapped car that's just in front of them as well. But I wanted to point out 45 minutes to go, call it 46 minutes to go right now. I think that if these cars completely topped it up, they could be good to go to the end, but it's just a matter of, do you want to put that much fuel in the car?
Well, that's some drama for World Sim Racing out of turn 5, but they were already down in 24th position. It goes to show margin for error here at Road Atlanta, even in these closing stages, as minimal as it's ever been. That CrowdStrike entry, by the way, has not really moved aside just yet. Will it be now that Matt Farrow gets into the draft, maybe gets onto the headlights as well? You can see the flashing there, just trying to get the memo across to Tanguy Bion, who's returned to the track in that damaged CrowdStrike Racing entry. He slices on through, and now 3 car lengths, if that, between the leaders, down under the Fox Factory Bridge. And the one thing that, Peter, the sim I don't think really gives you that sense for, the elevation change at Road Atlanta. That final corner, it's like a sheer cliff when you're standing at the very top.
Yeah, this when this track was built in the late 1960s, it was cut out of the natural landscape. The red Georgia clay was cut to the shape. The track was cut into the shape of the land, so you get that natural flow, and that's really where all the best racetracks are built, is across the natural curvature of the land, and works really, really well. And yeah, turn 12, it's especially in a prototype where you're really leaning on the aerodynamic downforce, it's really cool.
It's one of my favorite tracks in the world, I've got to say, and that's where iRacing comes into play, because yes, I've watched races at Road Atlanta plenty, but it wasn't until I did a few of the iRacing Petit Le Mans that I really fell in love with the track and the event itself, right? Because I think that's part of it. Peter talked about the track being carved into the natural landscape, but Joey, I think the race is maybe as much of what makes this track special as the track makes the race special. There's just this synergy between the two of them. Every time we roll back down here to Braselton, Georgia, I'm fixated for 10 hours.
It's pretty fun, and I also feel, given Real World Petit Le Mans is at the very end of the schedule, it almost seems like when Mother Earth turns the lights off, all the gloves come off. It seems like the driving standards don't get thrown out the window, but all the frustrations throughout the entire year, they start to rear its head, and what a better way to end the season than a championship battle with the gloves completely off.
And that's why I think I like the sort of contrast for us. We start our seasons here. That intensity kicks off the campaign. How close out of turn 7 is it? Half a car length, and Farrow loses a bit of ground out wide and maybe kicking up a bit of grass and gravel as well. They're both in identical machinery, BMW M Hybrid V8s. The only question, how have they set them up? Farrow closes into the braking zone, into the chicane, shows his nose for a moment, but can't get alongside.
The setup point is really important, Arjuna, because there is two distinct approaches for a setup for Road Atlanta. You can go for the high downforce and be quick through the first part, but then lose on the back straight, or you can go the low downforce, and the opposite is true. In the qualifying for the 2008 Petit Le Mans, Porsche pulled an absolute blinder against Acura in a really big development battle. They actually pulled out special aerodynamic wheels with flat covers on them as part of a low downforce kit, which they put in for qualifying, but not for the race because it was a little bit too twitchy for the race. But for a qualifying lap, it really worked and it pulled a trick. So the setup, you're right, these cars, they're out the factory, they're the same, but how they set up, and indeed which one has more fuel in it, and therefore which one will take less time when they go in for that final stop.
We saw the hands go neutral and naturally just trending to the middle there as Farrow tried to get the power down. I think one thing that makes this track interesting as well, when you talk about that setup balance and the two different approaches, is in traffic, I think there is a definite advantage to having a bit more confidence and stability, even if it hurts you at a top end. And that's just my philosophy. I've always thought that these drivers are more capable than me of wrestling a car that's a bucking bronco and trying to run them off the track. So we might end up seeing a bit more aggression that results in some craziness. And well, don't forget the craziest time of year if you want to join the iRacing party. It's Black Friday through December 2nd, 50% off all new membership and 25% off renewals and reactivations. Never is there a better time to jump back into iRacing than during Black Friday. So make sure you do so before time expires, because you could be here in 2025, part of the 48 fastest teams in the world competing in the IMSA Esports Global Championship as a pit stop for the final time today, Joey, for the 105 of Alessandro Bico.
He'll be getting enough fuel to make it all the way to the end here as our prototype leaders kind of streak down this back straightaway. I think that the number 5 was pretty close in this brake zone this last time, and he showed the nose, but obviously got the door shut by the 89. Once again, he kind of presents the car over there, but the 89 has plenty of pace going into that brake zone. I think he's totally confident staying on the racing line, kind of leaving that door open, knowing that a similar car with a very similar setup isn't going to be able to go that much deeper than him.
I think it helps as well that they're still running amongst the fastest lap times on track right now, even with this sort of psychological warfare. There's headlights flashing from behind, sometimes the slightly offensive line, right, the nose being shown into the braking zone, that can unsettle the driver in front. But they're faster than Channel 199 in third right now, and faster than everyone else on the track. So they're being aggressive, they're still being fast as well, cycling back up towards some more traffic through turn 7. What's this going to look like as they spool up the hybrid once again? And now with a GTD car in front of them, they should have plenty of clean air off into the braking zone. 2 more GTD cars down the road that might actually be a bit closer. Not going to present an opportunity for Matt Farrow. And we saw some heads-up driving from lots of drivers at the start of the race, Peter. I think we're seeing that right now as well.
We are for now, but as Joey rightly said, when the lights go off at Road Atlanta, at Petit Le Mans, the gloves come off and the knives come out. The light isn't going to disappear here, but yeah, I think the knives might come out, particularly in this leading battle between the 89 BS competition car and the Williams Esports number 5 machine. I think it's going to get very, very fierce between these two, because racing off pit road, I think they're going to be very evenly matched.
I'm hoping so. And while this race isn't going to end in sunset, that's one thing that Peter rightly brings up is something that might be a factor through the rest of the races. Last year, Sebring, we raced into the night, and then at Daytona, we raced through the sunrise as well. So changing conditions and understanding all of that, something these teams and drivers will have to do. But as we head into these final 40 minutes, there's been some more action around the track. Let's take a look at a replay up towards turn 3. And I think this is what happened to that Lamborghini, Joey, that I saw spinning out of turn 5 and then didn't see much more of it.
Let's see here. Jumps over the curbs there. Oh, just a transition. And then I wonder if he's just got so much grass on the tires. He was trying to get that 15th place away from that Ferrari right there. But it kind of shows you that even just the smallest minuscule mistake up there at the top of the hill can get you off track, and then you got to dig yourself out of the hole.
A hole that at Indy, there's a little bit more runoff. I'm thinking down Holman Boulevard, where you can, through the chicane, run out wide a little bit more. Sebring, there is some places you can run wide, but you know, there's not much margin for error, especially through a corner like turn 1. So high speed, so high commitment. And then Daytona, right? We've seen plenty of big crashes there in our 2 years of competition so far, hoping for a bit of a cleaner race. This, though, might be the closest Farrow's been out of 7, and with no traffic in front, can he get this exit dialed in perfectly? Once again, swings out wide a little bit more than maybe he would have wanted, but in the draft, with the hybrid kicking him through the gears, traffic in front once again. Is he going to be desperate enough? With 37 minutes to go, Farrow's not far away from a pit stop as well. Maybe 10 laps at most from diving down to the lane. He'll sit in line for the time being.
Interestingly there, Matt Farrow in that chasing car did not pull in many car lengths or really any ground at all into that 89 BS competition car as they shapeshift their way through traffic. And this is going to be quick now as the 89 BS car goes through. The GTDs stay well out of the way very wisely, and through they go. But yeah, on the straightaway there, either Matt Farrow in the number 5 wasn't at full gas. He was maybe just fuel saving a little bit, but he didn't get, or he's running a slightly draggier car, which if this comes down to a final lap dogfight, that could hold them back.
And I'm feeling somewhat of deja vu back to last year, but the fight was in the GTDs. It was Redline versus the Mercedes Apex teams 1 and 2 in the GT Daytona class, and it was this sort of a stalemate as well, where every time off of turn 7, you'd wonder, is he closing enough? Would Steinbraten be able to throw a lunge on Luke McEwen? Ultimately, the final lap, a small slip up from Steinbraten meant he wasn't even close enough to try and attempt to pass. You don't want to leave yourself with no opportunity. Give yourself a chance to fight at some point. Speaking of fights, it's a 3-way battle for 5th position. Race Clutch, Solpec Precision Racing, and then that fiercely forward car as well, all fighting, Joey, their way through traffic.
Yeah, they're heading down the S's on the bottom side of the screen. On the top half is still that lead. You see the leaders really running into a lot of GT traffic up at the top of the hill. It's actually going to be a GT car separating our lead pair now, so maybe a little bit of breathing room again for that 89 car over the 5. And oh, looks like we got the 95 car down pit lane. This is going to be the last pit stops for the prototypes.
Scheduled pit stop for Owen Carroll, who's going to top up the number 95 Channel 199 Sim Racing Cadillac with VP Racing fuel and 4 Michelin tires, and then see if he can try and close on these two. Look how visceral in their Mercedes GT3. May have enabled an opportunity there for Matt Farrow to get the power down a bit more aggressively and build a chance to pass, but once again, there's less than 2/10 between them. He's not close enough unless he really wants to throw a move to the inside. He's been patient enough. 35 minutes to go. Williams Esports Chill Blast reassert themselves at the front of the field. What can he do on the precipice of the pit window?
Such fantastic stuff here as well, and great respect from both drivers. And Nicholas Bodie didn't really fight that one too hard. He could see the move was coming. Farrow had got a great run out of turn 7. That's such a critical corner, and there's a switch for the lead, but this is far from done. Don't write off Nicholas Boe or BS competition. We don't quite know, but one of them may have a slight fuel advantage over the other, and it just takes one little disagreement in traffic and it can change the complexion completely. So really, really tight at the front there.
And I think Jaden alluded to it when Joey caught up with him after he got out of the car. They may have fueled a bit more than they had initially intended, so they may have actually had to adjust their strategy, the Williams Esports Chill Blast team. Let's see how they're going to figure this out in the closing stages. Of course, everyone knows Williams, the Formula One team, but now operating their esports arm for more than 6 years, a project that grew from Stephen English and Javi Guerrera wondering if Williams could do esports, to now a full-blown operation, and even some of the Williams esports drivers going out and racing in the real world. Here comes BMW M Team Redline though, and this has been a story of a fight back, Joey. To go from an incident on lap number 4 to being up inside of the top 10, this is a drive of a champion.
And they're taking their fuel and tires right now to make it to the end as we keep the cameras right here on that number 89 car of Nicholas, just trying to chase down the number 5, or I should say, still trying to stay in touch with that number 5. To the point, though, of the 20 car in pit lane, it'll be curious to see how much further he can actually progress. Based off of the pace, he can still make plenty of passes out there. It's just, is the traffic going to cooperate, and is the passes actually going to happen?
So definitely, I think at this point, GTD looking pretty settled. Red line 1 and 2, 2 cars split by 10 seconds, and then a further 10 seconds back to the third Ferrari on the podium. They are looking very strong, 296s to open up the season. Who knows what will shake up, though, in the remaining rounds with the custom BOP powered by TFR Lab that will continue to take on input from the drivers. They're all encouraged to send data in from all the different cars available, and then using what is submitted, the team processes all of that and dials it in for the setups that they've built and the different lines that sometimes these drivers take. Taking, for example, through turn 1, jut out to the left very quickly before the shimmy off to the right and the climb up through turn 1. These drivers are really loading up the cars, sliding past the BMW into the S's. Now out through turn 5, Williams Esports Chill Blast trying to give themselves a bit of buffer here so they can get on the power early and not allow an opportunity from behind. This is where the chess games really become pivotal. And Peter, one wrong decision is the end of your race.
Yeah, that's the tightrope you're walking. And this is fantastic stuff from both of our leading drivers, Matt Farrell and Nicholas Bowe. They're just carving through the traffic really smoothly, consistently, with just the right amount of risk. Great to watch. And Nicholas Bowe is getting a little bit of a draft. I think it's very, very marginal, but I think that BS competition car is trimmed out ever so slightly more. So I think it's running a little bit less drag, and that could be critical as he comes down into pit road then with 31 minutes to go, and Williams Esports, they continue. So there's a little split in strategy here.
Could be as many as 4 more laps before we see the race leader dive down to pit lane. But if you are BMW M Team BS competition, no error, I should say, on the entry into pit lane. You need to replicate that on the exit and your out lap. No mistakes. You could be challenging and you could have track position at the end of this pit stop cycle. And on the other side of that equation now, Joey, Matt Farrow is going to be looking at every little moment of traffic and thinking, I've got to maximize this. I can't really afford to wait too long.
I think that you got 2 options here if you're the number 5. You either come down pit lane right now and take the absolute minimum amount of fuel to get you to the end, essentially mirroring that strategy that we just saw out of the 89, because you know you were ahead of them on track, so hopefully you didn't lose enough time that you're going to lose position to the 89. Or you run those approximately 3 to 4 more laps. Looks like we've already got our answer. The number 5 is going to mirror the strategy, try to play this out.
So we'll see how long it will sit stationary. Expectation is that Williams Esports have entered pit lane with already some fuel in the tank. They may not need to top it up all the way, especially knowing 30 minutes to the end. It's going to be a close battle on the merge. BMW M Team BS Plus competition have come out crucially in front of both Race Clutch and Solpec Precision Racing. The worst thing in the world would have been to sit behind and to potentially lose a bit of ground. 32.1 seconds stationary for the Zebras. What's it going to be for Matt Farrow as he hits his marks, and now that BMW M Hybrid gets its final service? VP Racing fuel, Michelin tires, and now just drop and roll. That's all the driver's waiting to do. BS competition down to the final corner and running across the line, but it is going to be Williams Esports Chill Blast. 5 seconds quicker in pit lane, and now net race leaders, 30 minutes to go.
Well, it was all about that race on pit road, wasn't it? And Williams have played it absolutely perfectly, saving that quick stop for last. They've been hiding that up their sleeve like an ace card, and they have a commanding lead now in at the front of the, well, net lead effectively. We're still waiting for the Coanda car to pit, and that's the thing, where does Coanda fit into this? They might not necessarily be in the hunt for the win, but they could vault up from where they were because they took a full fuel fill at the last stop, so they can go quite a bit deeper.
I'm wondering if they'll be quite close to Channel 199 and Owen Carroll, who has been, within 5 seconds or so of the race lead for the majority of the 2 hours and 10 minutes to get to this point. But now, on the other side of the final pit stop sequence, does find himself around 15, almost 20 seconds off the net race lead. And so, Joey, that's how quickly things can change, right? And that's why strategy and having strategists is so important.
Everybody, it's tough to understand that in iRacing, you've got everything on your shoulders as a driver, usually, but in these global events, you have to rely on your team, your strategist, your team manager, who is not driving the car, who's not letting the emotion of incidents potentially get in the way, has more information than you. So as a driver, listen to your spotter, listen to your strategist, and execute the plan. And as your role as a strategist, you have to stick to it. And looks like a drive-through penalty, a strategist's worst nightmare for the 103.
30 off tracks across of the race so far, and that is off tracks, not incident points. If you're familiar with the iRacing incident point system, just something to keep in mind. We've been wondering, is there hope for the 8? Still speculating, likely to be a potential fight with Channel 199. Now, 50 seconds cone to cone for Williams Esports. Right now, the gap between 1st and 7th is around 45 seconds, so it's not far away. And if there's any driver that you potentially want to push to the very end, the young Elvis Rankin, Peter, I don't think there are many worse drivers you could ask to have.
Local boy as well, comes from just down the road and studies at Georgia Tech University. He's a seriously quick driver. He's come up through the ranks very well, and yeah, very, very strong indeed.
We'll be keeping an eye on the driver lineup across of some of these cars through the season. Teams are allowed to mix up their lineups here and there, but for Mitchell de Jong and for Elvis Rankin, it's been a relatively good performance. I don't think we've really been able to see the true speed of the Porsche, knowing that the second Coanda car wasn't in play to maybe also work a similar sort of fuel window. 26 minutes to go. It's a 40-lap penultimate stint. Here comes the number 8 down to pit lane, Joey.
I think this was the car that we've all been waiting on right here, and only 26 minutes remaining. You see the number 5 already on the front straightaway, so it's a non-issue in terms of the overall lead. I think it's more just going to be, where does that number 8 Coanda car actually pop out? I know that they've been trying to chase that number 95 of Owen Carroll and Casey Kerwin up there. It's just, can they get close to him? How much fuel are they actually going to take?
And again, I mentioned this slightly earlier, but overall, it has been a relatively clean race, especially compared to last year from a race control perspective. We're racking up some protests and penalty reports here and there, but for the most part, a lot of those are incident and off-track related more than anything else. 2 hours in the books for the 2024-2025 IMSA Esports Global Championship, and a clean start for the most part. We had a bit of chaos, first at turn 3 for the GTDs, then at turn 7, just as the traffic started to overlap. Tail end of the GTD field, front of the GTPs, and pole sitter BMW M Team Redline taken out, unfortunately, no faults of their own. We've seen, though, a couple of other drivers pushing here and there, and this is all happening as we build up to hour 2. Small bit of contact there between the BMW and Porsche that saw Team PGZ stationary and wait for the impact. Marcus Hamilton in the Movano by CrowdStrike entry, unfortunately, right into the side. This, though, has been the story. BS competition in the BMW M Hybrid, pushing all the way with the Williams Esports Dual Blast car in GTP. In GTD, it's been a battle between Redline and Grid and Go behind, but as we rejoin live pictures, big drama and a big storyline. Defending champions Gianni Vecchio in the 170, caught unstuck, unfortunately, and Redline and Luke Bennett, Peter, sitting now in pit lane.
That's a massive shock. They had a huge advantage, 10 seconds up the road, 24 minutes left on the clock, and it's all gone to pieces. We don't know quite yet what's happened. We'll get the replay for you, but oh my word, that is not what I expected. It looked like Team Redline were cruising to a 1-2, and nothing is guaranteed in motorsport.
Nothing's guaranteed, and Road Atlanta can be fickle to say the very least. I mean, just think back to 2015 in the real world, the weather that you had, right? And to the extent that the GT cars were faster than the prototypes because it was so torrential and you were just tiptoeing your way around the lap. But this does now mean it's still Team Redline that will potentially win this race. It's just the sister car, the 171, with Florian Lebigra and Enzo Benito behind the wheel. And what did I say at the start of this race, Joey? 2 hours and 40 minutes to kick off a season. That's just over 10 hours. Could it be a story of a championship fight, or could it be a story of languishing in obscurity?
You never want to start on the wrong foot, just like how you don't want to wake up on the wrong side of the bed there. And you can certainly make a tough season. Not only the first 2 hours and 40 minutes here, but also the entire front half of the season. This is that incident, this is the replay on what exactly happened to the 170 here. We're going to watch the number 4 prototype essentially just drive right through this number 170 lead class Ferrari, and then what we don't see is that the number 4 car actually runs through a second GT car there in turn number 1. So maybe an internet issue. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, G2 in their Ford Mustang, the other car that was caught up in that one. Unfortunate, whatever it is, but it's motorsport. Sometimes it's kind, sometimes it's cruel. And cruel to Gianni Vecchio and to Luke Bennett. No fault of their own. Similar story for BMW M Team Redline, of course, in the GTP. But that is motorsport. Whether it's real or virtual, you get moments just like that. Not quite sure how this lead has grown to such a degree. But now as we focus back in on the GTP battles, Max Muir in the Solpec Precision Racing car is yet to come down pit lane. He's putting the pressure onto BMW M Team BS Plus competition. We're watching Williams Esports, and there's no BS car in sight right now.
6.8 seconds is the gap. I mean, on the efficiency point of view, there was a couple of seconds gained by BS competition compared to the leading Williams machine, but it really has been Williams that have pulled the ace card out. They've just played the game perfectly, and they've just been ideal. But as we've seen, it can all go wrong very, very quickly. I'm still in total shock about that Team Redline incident. What could they have done there? And it did seem a really bizarre one. I'm with Joey. I think that's some sort of internet issue where the cars in the view of that CrowdStrike car have disappeared, and with an internet blip, and I don't see any other explanation for it. It seems all too clumsy for someone at this level.
Yeah, unfortunate. It seems like that word from pit lane is that it was a technical malfunction. It does mean Redline's 171 promoted to the race lead, PGZ's 114 sits in third, and don't look, but there's a dyno hunting you down. Rexy's on the charge, and here comes Michael Johnny. Tristan Iglesias did the first stint and a bit for the AO Racing by Coanda crew. Michael Johnny, who's been racing in basically everything across of 2024. Did some Porsche Esports Super Cup racing. We've seen him across with some special events. Just finished up the IndyCar Butt Kicker iRacing Pro Series. And oh yeah, Joey, now he's got the challenge of representing Rexy as they hunt for a podium.
He's going to have to hop on that T-Rex and kind of wrangle it around Road Atlanta here. I was looking at the last lap time, maybe just slightly off, but it's so difficult to tell if a prototype kind of box a corner or whatnot and really kind of takes away that lap time. I think this time by will be a little bit more representative of Gianni's pace, and yeah, right back to it, a 118.7, which is right on pace with pretty much everybody around. He shouldn't be under threat from anybody behind.
Well, we knew there would be drama. We've got 20 minutes left to go, and are we going to see some more to close things out? I think some of those race leading team managers and engineers hoping not. Those behind the broadcast booth and watching on probably hoping for just a little bit more. But let's be real, we've got 3 more races after this. and a championship still very much up for grabs. And we were wondering at one point, would Owen Carroll be under pressure from Elvis Rankin? Remember, a lot of fuel saving from the Commander Esports number 8. This is a fight for net third on the road. A podium's up for grabs. Elvis Rankin's looking every which way and really putting the pressure onto Owen Carroll, who gets balked up behind 07 Racing, down under the Fox Factory Bridge and back to the line.
Well, Elvis Rankin putting the pressure on. I do apologise. I was looking at Zach Campbell getting into that car. He was on the list. A late change for Elvis Rankin, so apologies there. And Elvis Rankin, a fantastic young driver who's really made his mark in sim racing. And he started off in the real world racing quarter midgets and bandolero cars and really climbed up the order through the simulator as well, and great to see him getting an opportunity at one of the top teams in the world at Coanda Esports, and he is really putting the heat on Owen Carroll right now in that Cadillac.
And now with Carroll going to the inside with traffic, is this going to enable Rankin to get a drag off the corner, sit in the draft and close up once again? Through the gears they go. Love seeing these multi-manufacturer battles as well, because you're seeing the different strengths of the cars around the lap. Rankin's closing, not close enough though. Surely he'll look to the inside, but that's the mental warfare at this level. Show yourself, but don't necessarily always commit. Is something going to be possible up to turn number 1?
It's been pretty impressive, just the pace set out of Rankin to hunt it down. And to your point, here we go. He's going to try the outside around turn number 1. You're going to have to be brave. We got a GT car right at the exit here. Manage that uphill acceleration zone. Got to give credit to that lapped prototype just behind. He's being very patient as well. But I think that where the biggest pace difference comes between this Porsche who's giving chase to the Cadillac might actually come down to the tires. The number 95 car, that Channel 199, he's got 15 laps on their tires, while Elvis Rankin only has 7 laps. That can be very, very different in terms of the grip level.
Does seem as though we don't have the same struggles on cold tires like sometimes they do with the Michelins in the real world in GTPs. But yeah, that fall off is definitely something just to keep in mind. We have relatively cool track conditions, of course, just by virtue of the fact that we're racing virtual Brazelton late in the year, so it's not like super toasty or anything, but managing the Michelin tires, definitely something to keep in mind. Solpec Precision Racing in, so we're now just waiting for Race Clutch, the number 23, the Cadillac, to come down for the final time today, and they have done a great job. We're wondering, might that be a fuel-only stop? Have to wait and find out. Rankin continues to put the pressure on though, and remember, this is going to be the fight for third position.
Super tight then, and Coanda doing an amazing job, although they did press, we were hearing they made an error with the fuel where they fueled up the car a little bit too much. It's better that than not enough, I suppose, but it has put them on a slightly different strategy, which does seem to be working quite well. And it does seem that Elvis Rankin's got a little bit more pace in that car, but it's going to be about getting the move done and making it stick though with 15 minutes to go.
2 drivers that have gained 14 spots so far this race by staying out of trouble. Drago Racing, Door Esports, the fight for 7th position continuing, and this is that story that I was saying, all these drivers through the field trying to accumulate points and get themselves into some sort of a championship fight. Even if you're not fighting at the very front of the field, there's prize money for all of the top 10 in each class. And so Joey, whether you finish first, whether you finish 5th, there's something to walk away from this championship with.
You always want that, call it straw to grasp at up there. You don't want to just be out there turning laps with nothing of a goal in mind. So it is nice to have a little bit of something to go out there and collect after each one of these races. You want to be able to reward, of course, the winner, podium finishers, top 5s, top 10s, points, and ultimately that championship is what everybody is fighting for. And this is one of the Porsches. This is that 114 car going down the back straightaway. You were talking about the top 3 in GTP. This is actually the 3rd place car in GTD. He was hunting down that number 102.
On board, sitting from the roof camera. Get that sense of elevation up and down this back straightaway. The one moment that you might get to breathe for a moment before the lap continues. Over and over again, 2 hours and 40 minutes at this track. Not as long as 10 hours of the Petit Le Mans, yes. I think we're going to talk to some sweaty drivers in victory lane after this one, hoping just to calm down before we go in a couple of weeks' time for round 2 from Indianapolis. That's a defensive line from Carroll. He's really starting to feel the heat here. Elvis Rankin, I think, is going to try and see where traffic will take him. 14 minutes to go, so he's still got probably a good 10, 12 laps or so with which to try and make something happen. The last thing you want to do, end this race under investigation by race control.
No, definitely not. And it's a championship where if you make an error, a big error, you put yourself too far on the back foot. So sometimes you've got to play it smart here. And Elvis Rankin's got, you know, for such a young man, he's got a lot of miles under his belt at this level of sim racing, so that will play into a factor as well. Right behind Owen Carroll, but there's unsurprisingly, there's nothing wrong with the grunt of that Cadillac coming out of turn 7 through 8 and 9, which you don't really register as corners at all, and then down to the critical 10A and B as they rush past the traffic and are given a little bit of space by the Corvette, but Rankin, into the back of him. Oh, the rear wing comes off. Oh, rear damage then for the Cadillac. Oh no.
And can it hang on around a full lap? You can see it's squirrely, it's not settled up towards turn 1. Carroll's going to continue to run if he can. He will not bring that car down unless he absolutely has to. I can tell you, he's not going to meatball from iRacing, so iRacing's not going to force him in the next 3 laps to come down pit lane. But you could see the discomfort down into turn number 3, and now a pass for a podium spot after a bit of contact, Joey.
And that's a tough pill to swallow. I think maybe the only saving grace is maybe race control is going to be slipped a ticket to look at that one, and maybe Owen Carroll just can kind of be a little bit easy on that pace. He's got 15 seconds back to the car behind him, so oh man, talk about ending your decision or ending your race under race control decision.
Here comes the 23. 12 minutes shy of the end of the race. Will this be fuel only, or will they feel the need to fit 4 Michelin tires to get them to the end? It could be a 2-tire stop as well if they're feeling bold, but have to wait and see what the report will be. Coanda back down towards the line. Inherit again, as mentioned, that spot on the podium. Have noticed that Channel 199 is still out there. They're not losing that much time either, Peter. They've just got to hold on with no rear wing for 11 minutes and 40 seconds.
Not easy, not easy. And you got to, I mean, not that we're in any position that race control are, but I would be very surprised if Elvis Rankin gets away without a penalty there, because if you're the chasing car and you get into the car in front, particularly in a battle like that for the podium, it's hard to argue against. So they're on the brakes, hard on the brakes, into turn 10A and B. And they know there's traffic there, and yeah, Elvis Rankin just doesn't leave enough room, from my view. He's just not just too aggressive and didn't leave the space, and that's why we saw that contact happening, I think.
Seems to be around 3, 4, maybe 5 seconds a lap that the 199 sim racing team is losing. You can just see how tentative they're having to be out through the chicane. That car definitely not designed with a lack of rear wing, as maybe some other prototypes have been in the last year or so. 10 minutes or so to go though, and our race leaders clear at the front. We still though have fight, and this now is a fight for second in GTD, because the 102, the grid and go machine, has been passed by Team PGZ for second spot, and now the Ferrari under pressure from AO Racing by Coanda. The Porsches are coming on strong in the closing stages.
It's always a challenge, call it, to see all the way down to the end of the horizon. What car is going to be fastest at the end of the race, and which team has nailed the setup? You might be a little bit slow on full fuel, but maybe as that car gets a little bit lighter, things start to light up and then all of a sudden really take off. This is pretty interesting, though. We've got, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, potentially even 5 GT cars all trying to get what is second spot on the podium. Our lead, number 171, has really set off into the sunset. But talk about a 9-minute sprint to settle the rest of the podium.
And well, a 9-minute sprint, at least for second, is better than no sprint at all. And you can see the traffic might play its part as well, both with prototypes, but also some GTD. That Mercedes for the Apex Racing team trying to just stay out of the way, and you've got to give them their credit. True endurance racing spirit in what has been a terrible way to start the season off for Apex as a whole. Still here, still finishing, and glad to see them digging deep to the very end. And Jamie Fluke, by the way, one of those drivers, first time he's been on iRacing for quite a while. How did he prepare for today? Ran a half marathon at Silverstone. Pretty good setting to run a half marathon as well. Peter, how are you feeling though, of course, with the leaders so far separated from this battle for second? You've got to assume that Miguel Costa is going to get the anchors out sooner rather than later.
Well, let's see. Let's see. I mean, Miguel Costa there in this Ferrari that, in a car that's had a lot of performance, whether that be in the hands of Grid and Go or in the hands of Team Redline. But he's got to get a bit closer. The PGZ car, 114 Lewis Woods in second. There is a bit of a gap back. So, yeah, they've got to... he's going to have to try and bridge it, and he's got to look out for not just the Rexy Porsche of AO Racing, but also that Mercedes AMG of Alessandro Bico in car number 105, the Italian. So watch out for that car too, because the Mercedes has certainly got plenty grunt down the straight.
And we do know from the fact that they have a 1.5% power cut in the Mercedes, sometimes they are a bit back in qualifying and have got to make some moves. What will they do to this? Rexy tries around the outside, down under the Fox Factory Bridge. Bico pokes his nose as well. Not going to be 3 wide at the line, surely. Rexy's boxed out on the outside now. Some momentum up towards turn number 1. Will they hold their foot in it and try still? No, they back out in single file once again, but second's gone up the road. This is now a fight for third.
Bico had... I'm sorry, I was just going to jump in and say Bico really had to lift off of the throttle there because he had a prototype coming up the inside of turn number 3. Thankfully, he saw it. It was going to be potentially a 3-wide situation. Visually, to me, though, Arjuna, I think that the Mercedes is probably the strongest of the 3 cars right now.
What's going to happen down to turn 6 here? I think you're right that the Mercedes has come on strong, but I also think those Porsches have come alive in these closing stages. It is something to keep in mind. Sven Haas had jumped out of that Grid and Go Ferrari, and Miguel Costa's been quick. I'm not trying to discredit him. He's maybe just not as quick as his teammate was, maybe struggling with the balance of the car a little bit more. There goes the race leader. Williams Esports Chill Blast has just passed these drivers. He may put another lap on them before we get to the end of this race, but the 3-way fight for third now, is very much starting to bring others in as well. Valkyrie competition, Drago Racing and Door. Peter, they're stacking up behind.
It is a proper traffic jam going on here between all of these GTT cars, but the Grid and Go Ferrari hanging on to that second place for now, but Rexy, the dinosaur, looking very, very feisty indeed. The little arms are waving around in this battle.
And they'll have to grab onto that champagne, hopefully, if things go according to the script. It gets separated slightly by the traffic, who now very patient behind the Ferrari until they exit 5 when that hybrid kicks into gear, and off and away they go once more. We're now under 6 minutes left to go, and I'm starting to feel tense for these teams. This is the thing about multi-class endurance racing, as confirmation of that penalty, by the way, for the Coanda number 8. But Joey, you may have done the perfect 1 hour and 20 minutes to start this race. You've now handed it over to your teammate, and you're watching, you're trusting, and hoping they get the result.
It's one of the most anxious times you have as a driver. It's completely out of your hands, and you can cheer on all you want. You can give all the advice you can to your teammate, but it is still ultimately in their hands. It's a very nerve-wracking moment, and there goes the AO Racing Porsche is spinning off to the left side after making contact there with that Ferrari. Talk about heartbreak at the end of the race for the 118. Oh, and more incidents as Bico as well as the Ford Mustang for position.
What a save from Bico. That's a bit optimistic from Alexei Nesov in the Valkyrie 177. He's lost part of the rear wing for his efforts there, but heartbreak for Rexy. Michael Johnny goes for it, and Peter, it all comes unstuck, and then chaos behind.
Oh, my word, yeah, we hadn't really seen much of that Nesov Valkyrie competition. Mustang, and certainly arrived with a bang there. We know Alexei Nesov is a real-life GT racer, class winner at the Spa 24 Hour, but he's aggressive. We know he's aggressive, and that certainly was a super aggressive move down there at turn 12.
He must have thought it was on. He must have thought he'd be given a bit more space, but I mean, this is a day late and $1 short of a move, if you ask me. Michael Johnny was always hoping that he'd get it wound down in time. Not sure if there's contact, but once that car pirouettes around, Biko gets the door opened on him, and Nessoff shoves it through.
Yeah, and actually at the apex at the top of the hill, there's the resulting contact. And like you said, amazing car control from Biko in the Mercedes. But what we didn't really get a good shot of is that Mustang was completely 4 wheels off, cutting the track up there at the top of the hill. So, yeah, just a little bit questionable to even get to the bottom of the hill at the apex.
Pushed it a little bit too hard, but at the end of the day, that is what drivers do. Limited time on the clock, checkered flag not far from flying. They look for the moves, they look for the opportunities. Race leader up front, now 10 seconds clear. Williams Esports Shield Blast have driven an almost perfect second half of the race. Jaden Munoz set things up perfectly. Matt Farrow picked up the baton and has not faltered since then. But for the BMW M Team BS Plus competition as well, they've shown their speed, and it's still a long way to go in this season. A lot of these teams are going to have ups and downs. Starting off on a good note is important though, and it was mentioned in our pre-show presented by Traction GG. Peter, Williams Esports won 3 of the 4 VCO Grand Slams in the GTP class. This is boding very, very well for them.
They're in the groove, aren't they? They're just really hauling the mail. They're doing everything right. They're executing well, and yeah, they're going to be a tough car to beat. But I agree with you. It is a long season. And I think if you leave round 1 with a podium in your pocket, when you look at how many high-profile cars have had issues, I think you can be pretty pleased. So BS competition, they're right where they want to be. They've clearly got a fast car. Clearly the BMW is a strong car. But for me, the story, I think, is Solpec, the car number 60, because we'll see the number 8 Coanda car serving a drive-through penalty, which will promote the number 60 Solpec car of Agustin Canapino, the 15-time Argentinian champion, and Maximilian Muir up onto the podium. And I think for them, they will be delighted with that in this first round.
Well, unfortunately, we talked about how much time a drive-through costs you here. Coanda served that drive-through. They're going to hold on to third. So that is just the way that things work, right? If this was Daytona, could have been a slightly different story. But I don't think you're wrong in highlighting Solpec Precision Racing. For the first time this year, the championship was open to public qualifiers. And while, Joey, a lot of the returning teams are here, the Red Lines, the Apex, the Coandas, the BS competitions, it's the stories like Solpec Precision Racing, like Fiercely Forward, slightly less well-known teams, but have fought their way into contention and are proving just how good they can be.
They want the opportunity, right? They want to sit at the big table and fight with the big boys and eat those big meals. And there's a reason why they're admitted in here. They've shown the speed, they've shown the organization, and they've earned the right to the global esports entry here with IMSA. So I think that there's speed no matter where you look. Remember, there's always a new crop of drivers, a new crop of spotters, a new crop of team managers out here. It's just finding that talent and really picking it out, and then it's up to them to seize the opportunity when it's given to them.
And what an opportunity it is as well. 3 more races to make their mark, and they'll start with a 4th place finish if they survive 1 more lap. With the white flag flying at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, the AMD 240 is moments away from coming to a close. And Peter, what a way to kick off what is going to be one of the best championships this winter.
You bet, and this is going to keep us going until the Rolex 24 at Daytona at the end of January, seeing the top virtual racers in the world going head-to-head across some of the best racetracks in North America. And arguably, Road Atlanta, one of the biggest challenges of the season, particularly for multi-class traffic. And, well, the top GTP teams have really managed it beautifully. Williams, you said they've won 3 of the last VCO Grand Slams, and a perfect start oncoming now for the start of this IMSA Esports Championship.
And we came into this new season of the IMSA Esports Global Championship knowing there would be some new faces, but who from the familiar ones would stand up to be counted? It's going to be Williams Esports Shield Blast, victorious at Sebring in 2023, but they'll kick off 2024 with a victory at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. What a drive from Matt Farrow and Jaden Munoz, and in a very similar sort of a way, a quiet day for Florian Labigra and his teammate in that Red Line 171, Enzo Benito. Their teammate was the one that pulled away and in dominant fashion established the margin until things came unstuck for them, unfortunately. The sister car was there to pick up the pieces, and defending champions Redline may not get the 170 into victory lane, but they'll start on top once again.
I think that even though that 170 is no longer in the race, the 171 picked up exactly where they left off. A deserving victory for that team and drivers. They did put 27 seconds on the rest of the field.
What a way to kick the season off. Don't forget, 3 more races to come, and if they're all as hectic and jam-packed with action as this one was, well, we've got plenty to work through on IMSA TV and on the iRacing Esports Network. We'll have post-race coverage and a chat with the drivers to come in a few moments' time, but for now it's time for these drivers to run a cool-down lap. And I think in many ways, Peter, Williams Esports will be savouring this one, given that they qualified well on the outside of the front row, but they weren't always up front, and they fought their way to this win.
Yeah, they did it through strategy and not making any mistakes, and they have to take full advantage of the misfortune of their rivals. You know, when you look at what happened early on in the race for the Team Redline car, which really is not a great deal they could have done about that, just with a big incident up ahead, but they handled it well, and they've taken full advantage of others' misfortune.
Well, full cool-down lap completed. It's now time for us to spin back the clock, figure out what is our AMD move of the race. And there were plenty of candidates, but the move that took us to victory for Williams Esports Chill Blast is our AMD move of the race. Lap 108, through the traffic, Joey. Opportunity there, opportunity taken.
Absolutely, and up and over that GT traffic getting in the way, and just ultimately the number 5 car being able to extend the lead, take the lead, and ultimately win today's race. Is one of the keys of the race, right? Is traffic management, being able to sort their way through these GT cars. And as you can see, there's no corner here at Road Atlanta that you really can't let that get out of hand. Get the power down coming out of turn number 7, get right in the slipstream, and that's what provided that opportunity for the big brake pressure down into turn 10A there, Juna.
I love seeing the sequence as well, right? Because a move implies it's a corner, but a move set up over an entire lap, very, very impressive. Matt Farrow slicing his way to the race lead, and after that would never look back. What a drive from Williams Esports Chill Blast to come out on top. That was our AMD move of the race. Let's head into our post-race report presented by Thrustmaster and take a look at these donuts from the winning team. Always great to see the excitement, to see the emotion. And that's a team that's mastered the art of the donuts in this GTP era. We'll take a look at the results presented by AMD. Unofficial race results as well, probably pending a few things from race control. 5.5 seconds, the margin of victory. They didn't push in the final laps, they didn't need to. And Williams Esports Chill Blast, BMW 1 and 2 with the BMW M Team BS Plus competition sliding in behind. Even a late race penalty for Kawanda couldn't stop their strategy, taking them to the podium just in front of Solpec Precision Racing. What a debut for them in the Porsche 963. A strategy for Race Clutch that served them well. 5th in the number 23 with their Cadillac working well on fuel. Fiercely Forward made some great moves to get up to 6th in front of what was a great recovery drive from the pole sitters in the BMW M Team Redline machine, fighting back to 7th through all of that intensity. Simify Esports scored as the final car on the lead lap, with Apex Racing Team down in 9th in their Acura, and then Channel 199 Sim Racing feeling probably rather forlorn, no fault of their own how things ended. Race Clutch in 11th, their second entry in the Cadillac, with Grid & Go's Porsche 12th, and then 2 laps down for the CrowdStrike Racing car with some technical issues. Williams Esports Racing Prodigy, Kawanda Esports, and then the second CrowdStrike car, all making sure they persevere to the end. Some endurance racing spirit on display. In the GTDs, domination and a margin of victory that would have been even greater if the 170 had survived. But it's the 171 for Team Redline victorious, with Team PGZ. I can't imagine what the reaction is in Pablo's Discord right now. Second, and in front of gridandgo.com, in the final step on the podium. Mercedes AMG Williams Esports hold on to fourth with Alessandro Bico just fending off the advance of Drago Racing, Door Esports, and then Valkyrie Competition. Rest of the teams scored technically one lap down. AO Racing by Kawanda. Shera Esports, our Michelin wildcard entry, achieve a top 10. What a day for them. And then Sontec Racing Overpower in 10th. Their teammates, the sister car in the BMW, directly behind in 11th, with Drago's second car in 12th. World Sim Racing, the 132, had a bit of a spin at turn 5, yes, but still grabs 13th and in front of the Chevrolet for the 56 Racing team. GridandGo.com Esports, Maniti Racing, Solpec Precision Racing, and then 2 Mercedes Apex Racing team cars, as well as the Mercedes for Visceral, bookend the rest of the top 20. And we still go into the sea of misery in some ways. 07 Racing, Vesta Sport, WSR Esport, Buckkicker, and then Channel 199 Sim Racing and Team PGZ. Those that finish with some clean cars, G2, Door, Team Impulse, and then the rest of the drivers unfortunately finding themselves in strife in the early stages of this race. A look top to bottom at our race results brought to us by AMD, and now Peter Mackay is standing by while our race winners for Williams Esports Chill Blast.
Jaden, congratulations on winning this opening round of the season here at Road Atlanta. You had to watch that last stint. What are your emotions like right now?
Yeah, it was very. I didn't know what was going on because we didn't know how the strategy was going to play out with BS. We thought we were equal with them on the field after our little glitch. After my last stint. But yeah, I guess we were actually better than them on the field. And yeah, Matt did a great first stint, and then he pulled away from BS, did the overtake as well. So yeah, props to Matt.
Tell us about how much you had to fuel save over it. So you're saying that they're very, very close on fuel with the BS car. How much were you guys having to fuel save, or was it flat out from the green flag?
It wasn't too much fuel saving. It was more like just, how much fuel we're putting in for the stops, and then, we'll do the fuel saving according to how much we need to save to get a certain amount of laps. But another thing was also the traffic. We kind of focused on that with the strategy, and yeah, it worked a few times in the race, and yeah, it paid off.
Talk us through that move from Matt at the end of the race there, or towards the end of the race. You're, I'm sure, watching on board on the car. What was running through your mind watching your teammate put that move in?
It was so nonchalant. Like, I did not think anything was going to happen, but like Matt, he just did it. Like, and then I was like, okay, here we go. Like, we're P1 right now. But yeah, we still had to make a stop, so we weren't unsure like how it would play out with the stops. But yeah, luckily it went in our favor.
Well, we're now going to get the reaction from the man who was at the wheel during that move. Matt, a fantastic final stint. Well done. Talk us through that move for the win for the race.
Yeah, it's, I'm quite surprised because I hinted I was going to do it a couple of times, but he never defended it. So he got a bit held up coming out of turn 7. And yeah, just put it into attack mode and yeah, just sent it.
It certainly played off well. Of course, you and BS Competition are running the same car, the BMW M Hybrid V8. When you were close in battle there with the BS car, how do you think the setups changed? How do you think they differ between your car and their car?
I think we're ever so slightly better in the first 2 sectors, which is the high-speed corners. And then they seem a little better out of the slow corners, which is the second half of the track. So it was always quite hard to get close to them.
Very interesting. Yeah, very interesting. We were trying to figure it out on the broadcast here to watch and see what was what. This is a seriously competitive championship, Matt, and you guys have got a win on the board. With other rivals having issues, how key is this going to be, do you think, to a championship fight?
Well, as I found out last year, it's, a DNF it's horrible. You really can't come... Well, you can come back, but you've got to have a lot of luck. So you just got to keep it on the track.
Well, you certainly did that today. Jaden, Matt, well done to you both on a fantastic performance, and you lead the championship heading into Indy.
looks like we've got our GTD winners joining us. That's going to be Enzo Benito as well as Florian Lebigre. Enzo, I want to start with you because you started today's race. You had to manage those gaps a little bit. All seemed to go well from what we saw, though.
Yeah, it was not too bad. I should have not let Sven pass at the start. That was a mistake. But then I realized that he was pushing really hard, so I was just chilling behind. And then, yeah, we got them in the pits. And it was back to 1-2. But overall, yeah, pretty fun race, I'd say. We got unlucky with the other two cars. Should have been a lot better for us, but still a win, and we take it.
It is a shame what happened to the 170, but still early on in the first half of the race, I got to ask you, were you expecting the pace out of the 170 to really kind of stretch that lead gap a little bit, or was there maybe an incident with traffic that kind of helped that?
No, I think they still had a bit of an edge on us. I should have been pole if I wanted to really do something there, but yeah, I mean, they definitely had a bit of an edge over us.
Well, you guys are the ones standing in victory lane, so don't take it too lightly. Florian, I want to bring you in. It seemed like things were pretty easy for you. I know the 170 was in front of you for a little while, but once that was out of the picture, it seemed pretty textbook.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was about to take the start, but my screen was glitching a bit, so Enzo to take it. But yeah, I mean, the other car got really unlucky, and we got lucky for that win. We should have been P2. But yeah, I mean, I was just managing everything off tracks, fuel, with just not chilling, but just taking any not risk, and I think that paid off. And we had a crazy good setup for the Ferrari. The car was spot on today.
Yeah, that's an interesting little piece of inside information. Was it just like a little technical issue that you couldn't get in the car or whatnot? And was that discussed as a team that say, hey, we need to have both drivers on deck just in case to start this race?
Yeah, I mean, my screen was glitching. There's some little lines on the screen, so I was just not confident to take the starts. Like for traffic, etc., I couldn't see much on my left screen. And it was also like a full stint. I mean, the last one was a bit less fuel, so a bit shorter. So, yeah, it was just more careful, I would say, to just let Enzo do the first stint and me doing the last one, the shortest one.
Well, it ended up working out for you both. Congratulations on the victory for the team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was the team of Redline drivers, Florian Lebigre, as well as Enzo Benito driving that number 171 Ferrari.
Enzo's hair still looking fabulous. I need to learn some tips from him as we get ready to make our way over to the Speedway. It's one of my favorite facilities in the world. It feels special when you land at Indy, and we'll head down Holman Boulevard with 2 hours and 40 minutes on the clock for the Thrustmaster 240. Peter, we saw this track in 2022 with the GT3s and the touring cars. It's going to be slightly different with the GTPs and the GTDs.
It will be slightly different, and I think it's a circuit that the drivers won't have as much experience as they will at, say, a Road Atlanta or a Daytona or a Sebring, where they're used to putting so much practice in for the big special events. The Indy is maybe going to be one that takes them a little bit more time to get up to speed, and whoever puts the most miles in the practice over the next few weeks, it's going to pay off for sure.
And something else significant about that race, Joey, is the fact that we've got an iRacing build the week after that, and some brand new tires coming to the GTP class. So all the work the teams are going to do for round 2, throw it out the window for rounds 3 and 4 when we turn the page into 2025. And so all the data they've accumulated, all the knowledge that they've got about these cars right now, you've got to maximize it for this Thrustmaster 240.
You've built the notebook for a reason, right? Go through all of the notes in that entire notebook, apply them for these last couple weeks of preparation going into Indianapolis, put all of the cards on the table, because like you said, it's going to be a different tire going into the rest of the back half of the season. So take advantage of that notebook. We're going to see who's fastest.
Real world mirrors virtual there as well. Let's be honest, new Michelin compounds of the real world. Teams have to do the very same thing. What a way to start a new season of the IMSA Esports Global Championship. 2 hours and 40 minutes at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. It feels right, and what a race. Chaos and carnage at the start, but once it's settled into the rhythm, some performances really shone through brightly. Williams Esports Chill Blast, Team Redline, they'll leave as winners of the AMD 240. We'll see you in a couple of weeks' time from Indy for the Thrustmaster 240 as we get ready to roll our way to 2025. See you there.